I do that a lot. Yeah.
So that.
Everybody want history? Okay, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the City of Kingston Planning Board meeting. Today is April 21st, 2025. My name is Suzanne Cahill. I'm the Planning Director for the City of Kingston. Before we start the meeting, I just have a few quick announcements for everybody. I do ask that if you do have a cell phone, we ask that you put that on silent so that it doesn't interrupt the meeting. If you do have conversations, we do have the chamber available. If you're not having with the planning board, we ask that you take them outside of the room. And there's also another conference room on the opposite side of the chamber, it's conference room 2. Also through the chambers are the men's and women's room. If you go through the chamber, men's is to your left and women's is to your right. If we have an emergency, we ask that you do not use the elevator, please use the stairs. If you need assistance, please ask us and we will assist you with that. I do want everybody to be aware that we are live streaming this meeting and it is also being recorded. So I want everyone to be cognizant of that and respectful of others that are in the room. We are going to, before we start, we're going to just make one quick adjustment in the agenda to allow for one of the applicants to get to another meeting outside of the City of Kingston. But we'll start with our first item. I'm going to introduce Chairman Platt. He can introduce the rest of the board members, and then we'll begin the meeting at 6:04 p.m.
Thank you, Sue. We'll begin with introductions. Again, my name is Wayne Platt. We also have Charles Palaco, Matt Gillis, Vince Archer, Sage Newkirk, and Sage, you're going to be in because Robert's out tonight. Andrew Harris and Kyra Grundy. Jen Cahill, have already met, she's the planning director. Kyla D-Day is the assistant planner. We have assistant corporation counsel Matthew Jankowski and Alderwoman Sarah Passy. There she is, the common council liaison to the planning board. Item number 1, the adoption of the March 17th, 2025 planning board meeting minutes. Everybody's had an opportunity to take a look at them. Any additions, deletions? Seeing none, I'll make a motion that we adopt it. Do I have a second? Second by Matt Gillis. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried. You didn't give the bathroom and exit.
I did.
Did you? Okay. That was. I wasn't listening. It's like I hear it all the time, right? Okay. Item number 2, we're under public hearings. It is going to be 615 Broadway and 35 Cedar Street. We have a lot line revision of the lands of the City of Kingston and the Salvation Army. Section block and lot is 56.109-3-16. 56.109-3-42. Secret determination transect zone is T5MS and T5N. So Ward 4. Baxter Development Company LLC is the applicant. City of Kingston and Salvation Army are the owners. We also have a second item for this location. It's a site plan and major waiver request to construct a mixed-use building with ground floor commercial and 70 residential units. Same section block and lot. Same transect zone, same owners, same applicants. Hi there.
Hi.
Could you state your names again for the record, please?
Yeah, I'm Natalie Quinn with KARC Planning Consultants.
I'm Colin Bryce, Mappos Architects.
So I know you guys have a long agenda, but it's been a few months since we've been before the board, so we'll kind of do a quick overview also for the benefit of the public hearing tonight, so folks know what the project is about. So 615 Kingston, many of you might have heard about this project. This has been a collaborative effort between the applicant and the City of Kingston.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. So collaborative effort between the City of Kingston and the applicant. The property is currently owned by the City of Kingston. The city put out an RFP, or request for proposals, back in, I think it was 2021, that the Baxter and Mappos responded to, and were selected out of a competitive effort. And so we've been developing this project in collaboration with the city since that time.
We're going to give you an opportunity to speak while after this is, right? Okay.
So the project is multiple sites, so now we are also partnering with the Salvation Army. So what you can see kind of, you can see my pointer here. Yep, so this part in,
See?
It's on the screen.
this part in the purple, darker purple that's outlined here is a city-owned parcel. That's what we originally started with. As we were developing the site, there was the only way to kind of come in, because this little leg here is too narrow, was off of Broadway and then out on that Cedar Lane. The city asked us specifically because of the new code to try to reduce curb cuts. So because of that, the project has evolved, and we are now collaborating with Salvation Army to purchase a portion of their lot, which I'll show you on the subdivision plan shortly, so that we can have in and out fully on Cedar, close all curb cuts on Broadway, so that can just kind of be a pedestrian facing front there. So now the project site, as was mentioned at the top, is 615 Broadway, plus a portion of 35 Cedar, which is currently owned by the Salvation Army. Overview of the project has not changed since our last presentation to the board, still remains the same. The goal has always been to provide housing, and especially affordable housing, for the city of Kingston, as well as a commercial center for the art scene in the area. There's 70 residential units split between studios, 1 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms, commercial space all on the ground floor, which we'll go through in the floor plans. And then also the retention of the Paulina Oliveros, I would say less. Oliveros, deep listening plaza, which is currently on the site. So there's some modifications to that to incorporate that and still meet the zoning code that asks for building frontage, which we'll talk about, but to keep that space intended for community use. There's also parking spaces, charging stations, bike room, and residential lobby. The project is 100% of the units will be offered below market rate rents. Per the code, requirement is 10% of affordable units and 10% workforce. The project is proposing 56% workforce housing units and 14 affordable, so 80 and 20. Summary of the changes. Since the last time you saw us, we made some adjustments to the plan. So adjustments to the proposed lot line that incorporate 35 Cedar, I'll go through that. Extension of the building along Broadway, which Colin will cover, and that intention was kind of meet in the middle between allowing access to a public plaza, but also meeting the code's desire for kind of complete kind of frontage occupancy along the sidewalk. Some updates to the sod materials, relocation of the entry gate, and then some minor site plan stuff in terms of removing signage, some modifications to fencing, and then landscaping to address comments from the urban forester that we got, which we're still working on. We received a second round of comments. And then also construction phasing plan. This is a very unique site. It's a very oddly shaped site. There's buildings on both sides and behind it. So we've kind of laid out very deep and long. So we've kind of laid out a 4-phase of how we anticipate to do construction on the site as well. So this is showing you, we are now asking to purchase, and Salvation Army is currently reviewing the full purchase agreement for this, and we are purchasing this kind of L shape here, boomerang shape here. Originally, this is their driveway entrance, if anyone's familiar with the Salvation Army site. This is their driveway off of Cedar. They would like the applicant to purchase that and give them back an easement for access to the site. So that way now the owner of 615 Broadway will own the full access to the site, which will also be granting access to this existing building over here at 609, 611. So we will kind of be the maintenance coordinator of the circulation to this site. And then again, with agreement to allow Salvation Army to use the driveway and the parking as they have. Some modifications to kind of the site plan work is, this is Martin's Lane. That is currently kind of a pretty narrow driveway that gives access to the rear of these buildings. This doesn't meet code in terms of the width required for a driveway. So we are proposing to close that and make that pedestrian access to the building only. And so we would like to close that curb cut, which will give an additional parking space on the street when there's no longer a curb cut there. Instead, all the access will kind of be going through this driveway now. There had originally been fencing kind of proposed along this portion between the residential neighbors and the building. There was questions from staff about how we would be able to kind of get in there and maintain the grass between the fence and the building there. So that fence has now been removed, and what we're proposing is the ground floor of the building, which is it'll be a blank wall. It'll be to the parking structure, which is the ground floor of that back portion of the building, will kind of be the division. So those property owners will gain a little bit in terms of extending their backyards all the way up to the building wall. And then we'll kind of have a fence along this corner to stop circulation around the building. There'll be a gate so we can get back there for maintenance as needed. Landscaping plan, we can go over this. I'm trying to make it fast but I can answer any questions on this. We just got some questions about changing the front planters, the grates, to be bioswales to match the rest of Broadway. So we've made that modification along the Broadway frontage per the forester's request, and then updated the planting list. And then there's an additional conversation about we're trying to be as native as possible in terms of our plantings, while also meeting the city's guidelines for Broadway streetscape. And then I won't go over this in detail, but like I've said, within the packet now is a phasing for construction, kind of showing how we plan to start closures, trucks moving around the site, and storage of materials. So now I'll kick it over to Colin, and I'll kind of put this as you need, Colin. But we did do something, the one big modification to the plan is that we extended this 3-story portion that is along Broadway. We extended it to kind of make the frontage longer along the property edge, kind of reducing the variance that we're asking, or the waiver we're asking for in terms of frontage occupancy, while still allowing for visual and physical access. And then that required some relocation of stairs within the building. So I think we can start here.
Sure.
The next one, if you want.
Oh, yeah, go back to that overhead. So this is the project here, you guys. Remember, this is Broadway, of course, UPAC. This is the Salvation Army building. These are the existing buildings on Broadway, existing gas station on the corner. Our building is essentially one building, but we've intentionally broken up into different masses to help break down the scale. This is the 3-story building on Broadway that Natalie was mentioning. And then this is 2 buildings here, which have the bulk of the apartments in it, set back from Broadway. It's a very deep site, as you can see. That's why access through here off of by the Salvation Army was really, really helpful to get access back there. But as you can go on to the next slide. So this is the extension. You may remember we had exterior access stairs to the apartments above on both sides of the building. That is now brought internal to the building. There's no exterior stairs anymore. But what you see here is this is the opening, or I should say the opening to the plaza. The plaza is kind of in the middle of the site with retail surrounding it. And we have a view later that shows that. But this is the Broadway building. By moving the stairs internally, we were able to open up this corner. Now the storefront wraps, so great visibility into that future tenant, as well as enlivening the access, pedestrian access into the courtyard. These are 3 apartments per floor, 6 apartments total here. The access to those apartments is here, right a door right off of the sidewalk on Broadway, heading upstairs. These are just 2 views of the same. This is a security gate. This is in the closed position. This is in the open position. So when, after hours, when these commercial tenants on the ground level are closed, that gate will be closed and locked for security.
In the planning board, we have moved this back a bit. The planning board might remember that when we had the exterior stairs, it was kind of right up at the sidewalk, and it was a little tall, and I think we were feeling like that was going to be a little bit imposing on the pedestrian kind of sidewalk area. So I think with this new design and a slightly narrower access to the plaza, we've kind of set that back. So now there's landscaping in front of that will continue to kind of green.
Actually, go back, Natalie. I just want to also point out, I forgot to say that this building did get 3 feet wider than when you've last seen it, again, to help that compromise, again, for that continuous street frontage, which is very, very important for the historic district, but also needed to maintain access into the Oliveros steepness and plaza. That's fine. So this is the Pauline Oliveris Deep Listening Plaza. These are just placeholder tenants. This is not what the tenants are going to be. That is TBD, but we have commercial tenants lining on this side, here, here, and here, all the way around the plaza to really activate and have a the intention is to really create a public square here, a public access community for the greater community. During opening hours, when the stores and businesses are open, those gates will be unlocked and open, and this will be open to the public. This is looking now back. This is the opening back into Broadway. This is the back side of that building facing Broadway. This is the side facing the plaza. This is the pedestrian access. This is the curb cut that Natalie was just mentioning. Taking away, so that this will just be pedestrian access to the main lobby of the residential buildings here in the back. Salvation Army is, of course, existing. Evening view. Floor plans, this is broken into sections because it's a big, long site, but this is the front section where this is the ground floor of the Broadway building here. This is the access through here to the plaza. So you can see here, you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 commercial tenants surrounding that. The tenants, of course, these are demising walls that can be moved and changed over time depending on the tenants that the owner winds up leasing to. This is the residential lobby here. This is the main access point that used to be an alleyway. Now it's pedestrian only access here to the residential lobby for the apartments above. Upstairs, got 3 apartments there, 5 apartments here. The next floors are identical.
And we just included those, but we were just showing the front portion of the building because that's the only aspect that changed, but I can go back to rear building if we need to see that at any point. So waiver requests, I think it's a little bit more than 3 feet that we've expanded. So this is one of the, so now we're proposing we were able to increase our frontage occupancy to 72% or just over that, still not meeting the required or the requested 90% minimum because we need the access for this plaza, which is part of the RFP with the city that we must, and that was part of the design of the project was to include that open space. So we're trying to kind of, like I said, meet both in their intent. But we were able to, as Colin mentioned, we were able to reduce the waiver we're requesting by increasing the length of that building from 69.5 feet to 76 feet. So, in order to get the occupancy requirement to a T, we would need a 94-foot building, wide building, which would only leave us just under 10 feet for the access and landscaping and everything, which would be tight. We want this plaza to feel open. We need to be able to be pulled into it so that it remains public feeling, be pulled into it from the sidewalk, and the narrower that access point gets, the less people feel that they're supposed to walk in there, right? So that's what we're trying to meet the difference there.
So now with widening the front facade, is fire and EMS still able to get in through that access point?
We had when we had talked about this, we did some workshops before this last meeting, and I don't believe the intent was ever to drive it. We're still gonna do kind of mountable curbs, I think is the intent at that space so that you could maybe pull a vehicle up there. Fire vehicle was never gonna get directly into that plaza, but there will still be access. And then with the gate, I think we'll just need to work out some kind of knock box or something like that so that there's a fob key or access key so that even after hours, emergency access, we still have through that gate. The other waiver that's being requested, there is a minimum for the first floor height to be 16 feet tall. But maybe Colin, you want to talk a little bit about how this was designed?
Yeah, the new zoning code is very clear, 16 feet for ground floor retail. We were asking you a waiver to drop that 1.5 feet to match the historic building next door, just for that consistency.
And then the one other waiver that we are requesting, there is a section of the code that requires that the principal building height be not more than half a story than the permitted height in the neighboring districts, right? So most of the building, we are okay. It is the rear kind of back corner where only 4 stories would be permitted, and we are proposing 5 stories. So it's kind of this little red box of the building where the code would want that for 20 feet, just 20 feet from the rear property line. So I think we already have a 5-foot setback, so 15 feet of the building to be dropped down. we believe like the benefit to this project in terms of we would lose 2 units, the benefit to this project of being able to provide more housing versus the negative effects of having this 15-foot portion of the building be an extra story is the reason why we're requesting that waiver. So we would lose units, which has been part of the goal that we've been working with the city the entire time to provide affordable units. Also, because they're all below market rate, the financial stack is very tight. We can build this project and it can definitely happen, but everything's a trade at this point, right? So losing those units would impact the project. Then I just have, if we need them, there's photos of the site, the parking study that we did for the area, existing conditions that are there that I can flip through as needed for reference.
Thank you.
Do you want to do the public comment first and then have questions, or do you want to?
You want to open it up to the public hearing?
Yeah, I want to do that. I have some questions too, so. We're going to open the public hearing for this item. We have one person signed up for it right now. It's Mr. Paul Martino.
Would you like us to move?
No, you're good. And Mr. Martino, this is not going to be like a back and forth, like question answer. If you have concerns, we're going to keep the public hearing open for this because we still have to refer this to county.
Right.
So there'll be other opportunities at future meetings. If you want to come and speak or have questions that you don't have tonight, we can certainly do that. But your comments will become part of the public record.
Okay,
All right?
okay, I'm the owner of 16 and 20 Henry Street, which building is going to be, I'm late to the game, you know, I just learned about this project when I received a letter that the fence was coming down because the approach is slightly over the property line. So my main concerns are the fact that the building is so close to the property line. You have one picture there that shows the garage. I don't know, the setback is 5 feet, is that what I'm hearing? Where you're going to be on the line?
At the rear portion, so I think these properties along Henry Street, the required setback is 0 and it varies between 5 and 8.
So my concern with that is you can see the garage right there. It's a masonry garage.
Yeah, this structure.
It's sandy based soil. So if you excavate straight down there, it's going to undermine that garage. So it would have to be underpinned, something of that nature to maintain the integrity. So I don't, I'm hearing that very tight on wiggle room for space and units. So I'm not trying to put a kibosh on the project, but I'm looking for a little wiggle room on the part of the developer to kind of keep the integrity of the area. So the height of the project is another one of the concerns because, the sunlight in the winter months affords a fantastic safety for my properties because that's a paved area back there. If I plow, the sun is on it shortly, that's all gone. I'm now going to be in it. The sun is low on the horizon, the building's going to be, a skyscraper for all intents and purposes, and it's going to shade the whole backyard. So that's another one of my concerns. So the height, I understand, I'm just hearing about the height, to get the amount, everything's 2.5, is 1 plus 2 stories. Now the proposal is for 1 plus 4 stories. So it's like really overbearing. Don't know what to say with that. The parking, parking is always an issue, and I don't know where people are going to spill to. I can see there's a lot of space available, but then people do things that you don't count on. So they'll be spilling over into Henry Street, trying to park over there. On our snow days, everyone's required off the road on big storms, and they rely on the municipal parking lot for that in many cases. So I think that's a major consideration. I don't know what would have in place for, notice the mechanical on the roof. I don't know if we have any kind of a sound barrier going up to stop condenser noise, so on and so forth. For generating into my property. Yeah, that's kind of it for me. I mean, it's just so tight to the property. I just like, I understand the criteria. I just don't understand the magnitude of it.
Okay. So as I said, it'll become part of the public record, your comments. If you have other questions at future meetings, you could certainly,
My main concern is that garage, when you start digging, that's gonna go. It's not a matter of if, it's gonna go.
Okay.
I actually, back when I was young, 24, I underpinned 20 Henry Street to make a third apartment. Took me a year, 4 feet at a time underpinning. It's all sand. So it has no stability whatsoever once you start excavating. So something's gonna have to be put in place for that. I don't know with the height, whether that's up for discussion. I mean, going for an extra story over, instead of being 1 plus 2.5, you go 1 plus 4. I just think it's gonna have a major impact on the.
Well, thank you. So see you brought the big guns with you here too. Good seeing you. Bob's over there.
He did a little R&D. Little R&D. It's not my expertise, but I had no idea this was going on until I got a letter 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
Like I said, I'm not opposing it. I just want to make sure
All
that
right.
we give everyone due consideration.
Okay. Yeah, is there anybody else wishing to speak on this particular item?
I have a question.
And what's your name, sir?
Cameron Khan.
It's Mr. Khan.
Cameron Khan.
Okay.
And I'm the owner of the mobile gas station
Okay.
right next to it. My concern is that the building in the back, can you go back to the very first picture if you may?
To the pictures?
Yeah, right there. You see this building is right, you see next to my gas station is really right in front of my face. It's like too high. How high those buildings are, the back buildings are. I know the front is ground plus 2. The building, second building, third,
They're both 5 stories.
5.
5 stories.
This is really high. It's just, you can see it, imagining it by looking at it is like it's really as he mentioned it, all the sunlight and everything is gonna block from the other side. And it's really, it looks very like a New York City type thing. It's like in front of it. It's really can look like it's gonna congest me in my building, and looks like a very congested. And the building in the back is also ground plus 5 or 4.
Ground floor is parking and 4 stories above that.
Oh, ground is 4 story. My concern is also like quite high.
Yeah.
It looks really congested to me, for us, part of my building prospect. And the parking is also again, that lot is used for the U-Pack, a lot, and then even then, when every event is happening in the U-Pack, I have to have my extra employee to watch out for the parking, so nobody park in front of my pumps or the fill and all that stuff, and now is literally have no parking space, all that is available. And then all this parking for the, and it's gonna be really impacted. How many parking spaces you have for all the apartment people?
37 parking spaces,
And how many apartments you have?
70 parking spaces, or 70 units.
So you're expecting them to park it on the street basically, right?
Well, no, I mean, actually, based on, we did some analysis for sorry, do you want me to? Yeah,
You can.
no, I'll stop, I don't want to go back.
No, no.
I will answer questions once the public hearing is closed. I can go back to it.
We'll allow this.
Okay. So there's a parking study that we did as part of it, and we actually looked, so partially what we're seeing in real life is that there's other projects of similar affordability where they're not seeing the full level of parking that was anticipated, right? They did 1-for-1 parking space to units, and that lot, I think this was, not that one, that was this one, Energy Square, right? Where majority of the time they're under 40% occupied, and that's throughout the week, during the day, in the evening, on the weekends, right? So part of it is when people start to live in an urban environment, or if you market it that parking is not free with this development, people choose to live here who maybe have one car per household or don't, and they're relying on other modes of transportation. Otherwise, we did also look at neighboring at the Cornell Street lot to see the availability there, which noting one of the weekends we looked at, there was an event, like you mentioned, at UPAC. And I think those will be tight days at UPAC where people will have to figure out on-street and municipal parking, and that's part of an urban environment that you live in. But the majority of the time there is availability at that lot too, if there was spillover from our lots. But based on what we saw at Energy Square and kind of the similar affordability levels that we're going for, we're pretty, and what we've seen at other projects, Baxter's and a number of projects in Beacon and Kingston and Poughkeepsie and Newburgh, we actually just don't end up seeing the same level of car ownership that you may see at other developments.
I also want to point out that the Kingston zoning code does not require parking. No parking was required. So the owners decided to put in 37 spots.
But that was based on what their experience of what they felt like they were going to need for this project, rather than just doing 0 because the code said 0, right?
One more question, how much space between my building, from, it's a L shape, that is, it's a space, having usually, if I have to go around for maintenance or any, weed whacking clearance, you guys have it,
5 feet?
5 feet all around my building.
And again, that follows the zoning code.
So you're setting back 5 feet off that property post area, pretty much on it.
Just,
So right here is where you're seeing where we kept this rear portion of this front part of the building 5 feet off, and then the building is already set itself off of its own property line.
But you'll be right on that post of my fence line. there, correct?
Yeah, close to that.
Because that garage is only 2 feet off that fence.
Yeah.
So it's extremely close. There's no
Yeah.
that.
But again, this follows the Kingston zoning code.
so the 5 feet of where I have already 5 feet already given, so it's gonna be 10 feet from my building, basically, that anything is.
No, I don't believe so. We're showing, I believe, 5 feet off of the side, and then your building is already 5 feet off the property line.
The property line is this black dashed line, so the new building is 5 feet.
That's
off.
5.2, and then I think it goes up,
Yeah.
sorry, it says
So
blurry.
your building looks to be less than 5 feet from the property line? I'm not sure exactly.
You're not set back 5 feet from your own property line,
But you're
but
right, your garage here is closer than 5.
Absolutely.
What's that? Yeah, it's, again, following the zoning code.
Right, so that's, you guys understand the underpinning issue. Yeah.
yeah.
I just want to say to that point, like, this entire project, of course, will be structurally engineered and everything will be legitimately, so. if
I got the
there's
building, well, as long as it's not under my.
Well,
line.
I understand that, I understand.
garage.
No, if underpinning of your garage is required, then that will be required. But yeah, this will not get past the building department without having everything
Got
legit and engineered. Understandable concern, but yeah.
Anybody else wishing to speak on this? Ready? Okay. Just a few questions for me. I'm glad the staircase became enclosed. And it's, the access door to it, is that locked? Is that keyed entry for people who live up there? How does that?
On Broadway? Oh, yes. Yes, just like any of the other apartment buildings on Broadway. Yes, that'll be a key for the tenants only.
Like a separate residential door, separate from the
Yeah.
commercial doors.
Okay. I think the old design kind of wanted people to, it was like a hangout kind of thing, that's the way I would think. So this is a better option, I think.
Yeah, we're happy with that.
As far as the fire departments or emergency access off of Broadway, you might understand that apparatus will not be able to get back there. Is that the? Okay, and you've had discussions with the fire department, I would imagine that they're cool with that. And also there was the curb was going to be modified to, and that's not happening. Is that's
That'll stay, yeah.
that's
it'll
going to stay? Okay.
I mean, it is wide enough to drive back there in case.
Yeah.
But yeah, but it wasn't required, but it is wide enough.
But that curb is going to be modified in case we, yeah, okay.
Yeah,
I just want to be
chamfer
clear
here
on that.
top.
Okay. And how close are you with the whole Salvation Army thing was dragging this thing right along.
Yeah, so where we've ended up in the last month or so is that they wanted us, we've been trying to get them to sign a letter of authorization the whole time, just so it's like we could, they decided, no, just send us the whole purchase agreement. We want to see the whole purchase agreement. We'll sign that and we'll sign your letter of authorization at the same time. So right now, that's currently before them for review. I did see your comments about getting a draft of that for court counsel to look at, happy to do that. Salvation Army is in the process of marking it up as well, so there may be some modifications for that. But we can share that with you so you can kind of see how 609, 611, Salvation Army, and all of us are working together. It's been a long
Just imagine-
process. I don't recommend anybody try to purchase
Just imagine
property from the Army.
you coming, your team coming to each meeting and having to go.
Yeah.
Salvation Army thing still doesn't resolve, and they're gonna bring that up again. so
Yeah.
Hopefully that's.
Oh, no, it's become the bane of my existence too, so.
Right, one thing about that, we had originally wanted that in order to submit to the Ulster County Planning Board. But given that they are continuing the effort to move that process forward and they developed plans well enough at this point, I would be comfortable with the board referring this at this point to the county, Ulster County Planning Board for their review and recommendation and not delaying that any further so that they can get feedback from them and work that into any final project plan.
Can we go to the board, Recreation Commission too? Don't they need to review and comment on?
This board will also be making a formal referral to the Parks and Rec Department on the payment in lieu of parkland
Yeah.
consideration for the project. So that'll be another action taken this evening.
Can I ask a question about open space? That was one of the comments that came up because our open space requirement has now increased because we're purchasing the Salvation Army site. So that's, we used to be compliant and now we're adding 9,000 square feet. You have to have 10%. So I think where we've got, I had the team go back and kind of measure the full interior plaza plus the access point. And that is at 3,661 square feet if you count all that. So that's a little bit short from what we need, which is 4,275. I saw some language in the code about pedestrian walkways or trails. So if we add some landscaping and stuff along this pedestrian
That can
access,
be-
can
yes,
that be
can be
counted in there?
calculated as part of that.
Okay, so we will add that to the next plan too. And then one other question I had was, unit layouts keeps coming up. So I think we have general, division between studios, 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms. Usually we don't get to the point of developing the full kind of committing to a unit layout in terms of where the sinks and bathrooms and everything go until we get to building permits. But that keeps getting requested. So I'm just wondering what kind of information from that does the planning board want to see? So that maybe if we can't do the full exact floor plan, construction drawings for all floors, we could show something.
Right, it would just be like a typical layout that you might have for a studio, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, just a typical layout. And it would just be, a set aside diagram and we wouldn't be held to that. I mean, obviously the building code will
Dictate what has to
ultimately, when
be.
you get to the building department, will determine where everything goes. But
Okay.
just a standard typical layout that you think
Could-
might be utilized.
Could we show you something similar from a similar project? What we're trying to do is obviously the client doesn't want to spend more money on design fees if they don't have to at this point. But it's like,
If you think that's feasible to relate to this, yes.
okay.
Yeah.
But specifically, is it, I'm just interested because planning boards normally don't
Yeah.
ask for interior layouts. I'm just curious what is.
We
is
don't
there-
want the whole, every single unit. Like I said, we're just looking for a typical type unit, the way one might be set up and
Okay.
configured internally, just
Okay.
get an idea of functionality and circulation.
Can I add one thought? The fence, when you're done, you gotta tie it back into your building, because the whole reason for that 8-foot fence, for 40 years, I'll be running around the back of the building, slipping behind that fence and running through my property. So when you're done, just pick up that fence and tie it back into the building.
Yes,
I think that is the idea
Yeah.
on that side.
so we tie in on this corner here. So each of these properties is gonna gain a little bit from our property in terms of what your backyard is, and it'll come all the way up to the building. And then we're gonna put a fence here to stop any circulation.
You know, my fence line is the second one over. I can't see your cursor. Not where the arrow is, right there.
Yes, And so there's a fence somewhat along that property that's on the 615 property right
Yeah,
now.
about the fence coming perpendicular to the
Oh.
building. That's not a fence line there.
Okay, so a desire to have that come all the way down to keep you separated from your neighbors. Yeah, I understand.
This is the fence.
Yeah.
So tie it back into the building,
Yeah.
rather than me running around skating through.
Any board members have questions? Okay.
I like the new adjustments.
Pardon?
I like the new adjustments. Yeah, it fits in nicely.
And these are the colors that you're gonna be going with, too, that you think this is, okay?
They should all be noted in the architectural drawings that, I know there was a correction, we'll double check, there's something like a metal, so we'll be clear what that's calling out, but.
Right, yeah, so the staff notes that you see in front of you have been provided to the applicants so that they can start working on the questions that we have raised.
The height of the building, there's mention of considering stepping it, is that along the section that Martino?
Mr. Martinez.
Mr. Martino was discussing, was that along the back of the property there?
It would be.
No, behind his building
okay.
would be, right, that would
Okay.
be that little end
Gotcha.
cap there,
Okay,
right.
Considering that the back of the property,
Yes.
Yes,
well, the entrance is now from the opposite side, so the back of the property, my buildings, after the old property, but being incarnated now as a new entrance at the front of the building towards Cedar Street. The back of the building technically will be along 16, 20, 24, and then yes, and technically be the back of the building. This,
no, that's technically the side, the frontage is technically Broadway, and it's all, they're all connected, all the buildings are all connected. Even though they look like maybe they're separate
I got
structures, but the front is still Broadway, and that's how it's looked at in the code.
Okay, so we're gonna keep the public hearing open, and this time I'll make a motion that we, you got something else?
I just want to get to that sheet.
Okay.
There's two sheets. Okay.
All right, so we're gonna make a motion that we refer.
Now I should do a motion to table the lot line revision.
That's all, this isn't gonna be a package, it's going
They're
to,
10 and 11, yeah, they'll go as a package, but if you do it and then on 11, we'll.
all right, so this time I will make a motion that we table item number 10, right? You're gonna use that?
Yeah.
Okay, even though we're at number 2, item 10 on our agenda. Do I have a second? Second by Matt Gillis. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried. And so the county will be referred to with item 11?
Yeah, refer to county and to the Parks and Rec Department, and we'll be continuing the hearing.
Okay. So that, what Sue has just described is in motion. Do I have a second on that one? Second by Chuck Palaco. In favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried. Thank you for providing us with updates and
Thank you.
for listening to the public here. And, we'll be happy to see you at our, hopefully our next meeting, right? Yeah.
I have one more question is there anything else that the board needs us to prepare for seeker? I know we have to wait for these comments to come back, but just, is this or I'm just trying to wonder if we could start considering
No,
looking at.
I know that John Schulteis is doing the final review. and
Wait,
then
sorry.
Don Schulteis is
Our
doing
city
the final
engineer.
review, city engineer.
Mhm.
Keith in his office had done an initial review, Don is doing a secondary.
Okay,
So hopefully they'll have their comments back to us shortly. As soon as we get those, we're going to be forwarding those to you. And I know we're meeting about the urban forester.
Yeah.
And we need to have any other subsequent meetings before next month. We'll arrange for those to happen so that we can answer questions back and forth.
on the secret. Okay, perfect. All right, thank you all so much.
All right, thank you.
Right.
Okay, oh, yeah, there's two items there. She go get some speakers.
Yeah, right now we just have one signed up, so I don't know if anybody else is going to be speaking on this.
All right, we're going to go to, which is on our agenda here, item number 2 and 3. It's 140-150 Boulevard and 160 Boulevard. First item is a lot line deletion of the lands of Park Ventures Corporation, section block and lot is 56.40-2-4 and 6, secret determination, transect zone P3N, Ward 5, Park Ventures Corporation is the applicant owner. Couple of these. And item number 3 is the same address, and it's a site plan to construct 3 8-unit residential multiplexes with major waiver requests. Section block and lot is 56.40-2-4 and 6. Secret determination, transect zone T3N, Ward 5, Park Ventures Corporation is the applicant owner. We had one person signed up to speak in the public hearing for this. It's Elaine Sabicki. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yes, you did.
Okay. Welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to read this, which I think may have already been put into record, but I think it's kind of good for all of us to hear it.
And is this something you want to submit after you're done speaking to?
Yes.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay. It appears that the communication with the city's water department dated April 10, 2025 was not part of the materials viewed by the Ulster County Planning Board. This is a serious oversight in that the developer has not submitted a plan to address water pressures that will affect the public health, safety, and welfare of the residents that live in the immediate area and the residents of the proposed development. It also I find it curious that the Ulster Planning Board only advisory comment is to plant additional trees in front of the 2 buildings closest to the boulevard. They failed to address the numerous issues pertaining to the traffic and the ingress, egress, and the property as well. The City of Kingston zoning code section of administration and enforcement lists multiple required submissions, 405.26.81F, that have not yet been submitted and available for public view. The code states that these must be submitted for the site development application and plan to be considered. Approving waivers ahead of required documentation is not adhering to the form-based zoning code adopted August 2nd, 2023. Additionally, the objectives of 405.26.e states numerous sub-segments that should be adhered to the reviewing site plans, which are appropriate for this project. Consideration shall be given to the public health, safety, and welfare, the residents or users of the proposed development, and of the immediate neighborhood in particular, and the appropriate conditions and safeguards as may be required to further that expressed intent. The short environmental assessment form that has been submitted by the developer is flawed. Stormwater management plans have not been addressed, number 10. In addition, under number 17, the developer has proposed an on-site drainage system but has failed to complete the required submissions form, unless that's been done. The Kingston Conservation Advisory Council, in their communication dated January 17, has recommended that the stormwater runoff be infiltrated on site rather than piped into the sewer. Using green infrastructure, there are serious concerns about stormwater control and runoff. Properties along Pettit, that's where I live, Kingsburg and South Washington avenues, as well as the boulevard, have experienced flooding, not only from surface water, but especially after torrential downpours. These residents have to contend with flooded basements due to this neighborhood not having an adequate storm system already. Has an accurate water table study assessment been made for this area? Other proposed development has failed to materialize near this location due to unavailability of these services. The proposed project will dramatically change the character of the neighborhood and add stress to insufficient and faltering infrastructure. Discussing materials and colors for buildings, installation of fence around the of property and retaining walls along the side of the site is premature when underground infrastructure services and utilities are paramount. Therefore, the planning board should take their discussion at this point until table their discussion at this point until all the required documentation is submitted for the proposed housing projects and address recommendations from the Ulster County Planning Board. I wanted to just mention too that not having a parking space for each apartment seems to be a very potential problem, as on the other side of our block on the boulevard, we've had people, it's an apartment building and they come down on our little two block space and park on our property because they don't have enough parking space. And I'm afraid that's going to happen with this proposed apartment building, since they don't have a parking space for even one for each apartment. And then also I want to remind you that the fire trucks I've seen outside idling my house at 1 and 2 a.m. in the morning with the torrential downpours, and the guys had their waders on, white water's coming down Pettit Avenue. They were pumping out the neighbors across the street, their basements. And then just like to say, we're not against Mr. DeAngelis either. I know it seems like we are, but we're not. I do hope that he's able to build something there where he could certainly recoup his money and possibly move this larger 28 apartment building somewhere more appropriate. It would be more appropriate. So please accept this communication to be part of the official public hearing for this housing project.
Thank you. Is there anybody else wishing to speak on this thing? Okay. Gentlemen, can you state your names for the record, please?
Joe DeAngelis, Our Ventures Corp.
Okay.
Ricardo Masalma, Joyce and Conrad, project engineer.
I'm sorry?
Project engineer, you want my last name? I'm not gonna do-
No, you're good. No. We got enough.
Okay.
Oh. All right, so, any changes?
Yeah, I can give you a brief.
Go ahead.
From the last time we were here about a couple months ago, first I'd like to thank you for the comments that you provided. We appreciate any guidance from the public just to consider if there's any issues that would be, we need to take a look at it, especially in a brand new design like this. From the last time we were here, we updated the plan set, took it a little bit further along the way. We worked on major design elements, which included the drainage, landscaping, lighting, some basic utility plans, and stormwater management in general. The plan set that was submitted and went to the county for review, that's basically the latest that we had over there. The city provided some comments regarding the some design elements that we also went through. One major thing that I'd like to everybody to understand on the board is I uploaded a document today. It's something that we got from the city of Kingston Sewer Department. I don't know if you have, I just put it on. Yes. If you want, here's, it's an easier in case it doesn't show up. So it's basically, if you look at the, location of the project, there you go. Right there. These white lines that you see are basically contour. I'm sure you're all familiar with it, looking at other plans and stuff like that. This is higher ground, left and right. Everything goes into a low point, which is basically pitted out. Today, without the project, without doing anything, that is a low point. This is basically almost like a little valley there. Everything runs through it, goes right into Pettit Avenue. All those streets all those houses on the street that are, not happy with the way that they have to pump the water out. It's just there's no infrastructure on the street. It has no drainage system whatsoever. So no matter if this project happens or it doesn't happen, the water is gonna go there, the water is gonna pool over there. They still have to call the fire department to, the severe storms to come over and rescue them from that. The goal for us when we added the project and then we changed the nature of what's there right now. You got grass, you got light wooded areas. The water run on these surfaces in a specific way to reach a destination, which is basically, if this is the entry of the site, that's the exit of the site right there by Pettit Avenue. If I got a bucket of water that enters right there, it leaves over there in a specific time, comes through the site and leaves. When we change the surfaces and put paved surfaces, we put roofs, change the speed of that water going through and the absorption of it in the ground. This is the measure that we did in our study. So what we ended up doing basically is we proposed, chambers to be put underneath the parking lot, pretty much covering the entire area of the parking lot. We would capture all this runoff, basically store it, slow it down. Didn't even count for any infiltration, which it might happen, but we didn't even count for that. And then slowly release that pool of water from the same exit point where the number before and after either match, or maybe the after is just a little bit better than what it was before. So to make the statement that we're going to fix the problem that's there right now, that is not going to happen. We cannot fix the problem that's currently exists. There is a drainage problem. It is just because of the way the topography is. It's because of a combination of the runoff that currently happening and there is no infrastructure. The water doesn't go anywhere. So, but the statement that we can make is that we're not adding to that. We're not going to make the runoff more, or we're not going to make this flooding issue that's currently happening worse just because of the condition that we have. If anything, the project is really like located in the same situation and everybody else who owns a piece of property on the same land where it's also affected by the runoff, by the water coming right through it. So I just want to make sure everybody understands how the nature of that site looks like and how everything's happening on that specific street.
Well, I know how things happen through there, even without this project, coming to fruition. I'm not an engineer, all right? But we rely on our city's engineer to provide us, data and that he's satisfied that what you're saying will hold true. So my concern is that, I know you want to capture the water and just slowly let it get into the rest of the system. Now, I've had some internal discussions with planning staff recently, and there are some issues that the engineer's office still hasn't signed off on, right? There's not enough information yet provided. And one of them happens to be the stormwater, the capturing the stormwater. From what I understand, it's not just the topography, but what's underneath the soil. Is there not enough room before you get to rock to capture this? From what I understand, Sue, does he trying to see if we can capture the whole thing and just keep it on site? What's the?
Right, the question was what the soils are in the area of your underground chamber system didn't appear to be suitable at first glance for that type of a system to be located in that location. So,
If it works for infiltration, which we're not using it. for
Right.
infiltration. So if the goal is to do infiltration and put all this water into the ground, that is not the method that we.
But, and are you having discussion? I'm sure.
No, we didn't have any discussion with the city engineer yet.
Okay.
All we did is basically
There
did the
is- there is
study.
a scheduled, we do have a scheduled meeting with the applicants and internal agencies on the public utilities. It'll be covering not only the water, but the stormwater and the sanitary sewer will all be covered at that meeting, which is scheduled for next week. So that will happen internally with the city agencies.
Can I ask a question on this topic since we're on topic?
No, we're not gonna close the public hearing, so you're not gonna, if you still have questions after today's meeting, bring them up at our, just keep it up here. Yeah. All right, yeah, so other issues are, I found it out today that you got a report from the water department that the
I didn't receive an official report. I just got a
communication.
general email saying that there might be a water.
The water supply might not be adequate for the size of the building.
And that's just something that I'd like to understand in those meetings, because again, there is a fire hydrant at the end of the pit right there, that could be a possible connection. There's also a water line across the boulevard that could be a possible connection.
So the water line across Boulevard, when I found out about this, I was like, there's a heck of a big tank on top of Golden Hill, but I understand it's from, that's from a different system, right? So this.
Yes.
I believe it is from a different system, yes.
Yeah.
Right.
But at the same time, do we put a booster pump in each one of the
So I mean,
buildings?
there are options, but how to.
The issue really is kind of like relative to the mechanical engineer who will be working on these buildings to give us a sprinkler load and how much they want.
Okay.
So it's one of the pieces that we're gonna just need to know, had the city did any study that hydrant and what was the pressure that was recorded? And if it is that adequate or not? And if it's not, then, we can propose a piece of solution.
Yeah.
As far as the sewer, there's a manhole right there at the end of Pettit, that green one over there that we plan to tie into it, so.
So I think there was there was a lacking on your plans of showing where it was tying into.
Yeah,
Is that the
I'll
case?
tell you what the issue is. These two houses right at the corner, 132 and 128 of the tax map numbers, we can't figure out how the services are tied. There's a few weird things happening. The only thing the reason why there's just an arrow that says we're going that direction, the goal is the following. That is the last known manhole that we know is in the system.
Okay.
From that manhole over to our site, this is all gonna all be brand new. So we're gonna basically extend the main, put a couple manholes on our site. And if these two services are connected somehow, and not in a good way, we're just gonna reconnect them to the new manholes that we have and then just run the system that way. But right now, it doesn't make a difference for us to go out and dig and.
No, but
But that's the reason why we said we're going that way. Just to say that I do have a way out for the sewer to go into Pettit Avenue. Same thing with the water. There's actually two ways or more than one method of getting water into the system. Including the idea, either we get 3 services, one for each building, or one main. The reason I choose a one main 8-inch, because I thought we we're gonna have a good idea of having an end fire hydrant right on site. This way we can flush the line if needed, and also having a fire hydrant on site.
Any board comments? I mean, have the notes in front of you. Does the board have anything that they want to question or talk about with regard to the project?
One thing that we need to look hard, the engineers to figure out what they could do with stuff down on South Wall Street, because that's caused a big problem. I do not believe his project could make it work, but the city needs to look into that and come back and give us some answers. And you said you're meeting with them next week.
So if we have a number of issues that have to be addressed, what we're talking about right now.
Yeah.
But, I just want to go back to some of the initial meetings that we had when you first came here. We talked about some of the waivers that were going to be required for this. And I believe at that time, I think you got a good feeling from the board that, you know, we're talking the building height and also the setback requirement, or the, you know,
Built to zone.
I'm sorry?
Built to zone?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how, you know, the board kind of gave you a nod that we were supportive of, you know, of the project. And, you know, even though we didn't grant waivers at that time, at a waiver or two at that time, you know, I hope the feeling that you got from us was that you're supportive of this project. So, you know, if we can get these issues taken care of, and look at, there's ways to take care of it. You know, I'm not an engineer, but, you know, it's got to meet within your budget to take care of all this stuff. So, you know, it's good that we're finding out about these things now, and, you know, that warrants further discussion. And, but again, does the board still feel good about this project, about where it's located, the height, you know, the waivers that we're, you know, we're not making an official proclamation today, but I think you guys can remember back to those earlier discussions we had. But, you know, is that, if somebody feels differently, please, you know.
I'd like to discuss some of the waivers.
Okay.
Okay,
And I'm not saying it was unanimous, it was not a unanimous, but I mean, just.
The building height, I know in the, I'm not remembering the exact zone, but the zone next to it, you can get higher building height by adding more affordable housing or affordable units. I'm not sure how the board feels about maybe putting that requirement in place, since they are asking for more height here.
We are.
That is.
The entire half story.
Okay.
On all three
That
buildings.
is part of what.
That is the reason why.
To get that extra.
Okay,
extra
gotcha.
story.
Okay, all right.
They are required to make those units affordable
Okay,
in each building.
There's 8 total.
And then,
Gotcha.
right.
okay, all right. That's my concern.
Okay.
Waivers.
There was a neighbor who spoke at the last, in the hearing of it, I believe it was Sebastian Lieberman, who had recently, I think in the last, definitely the last 7 to 6 years, built a new home within the neighborhood, who experienced some of these infrastructure things and was able to, you know, overcome a lot of them, all of them, and hasn't had any issues. So I think that is also, you know, something on the horizon to believe and trust that there's, you know, a lot of different ways of working out projects like this.
I have a question, which I have to say it's a subject of the board discussion. And this is just advocating on behalf of the client for the budget cost review. One of the comments we received is the assessment of $3,000 per unit for
Direct phase?
right. They are exempting 4 units out of the 24. So the first question is, if you have eight of those units are affordable, can the exemption go to 8 instead of 4? That's the question.
Well, right now, the first 4 units in any project are exempt from assessment on the payment in the Little Parkland fee. So the process is that we typically refer a project to Parks and Rec Commission. They review the project, and they return what they feel is the appropriate assessment. And this is payment in Little Parkland, which means public parkland, okay? So they do look at, you know, the project and what it's offering, and they make a recommendation back. In this case, Parks and Rec did recommend full fee be assessed over the ones that are wholly exempt under the law. So then it's up to this board to make a final determination of what you want. You know, I will say historically, the board has assessed the full value on projects in the past. It's a one-time payment. You know, and it does go towards offsetting capital improvements of the city's current infrastructure and in parks. So it's not just money that goes back into the budget to offset administrative costs or programming, it's capital improvement, it's physical.
But there's nothing in the, he asked about exempting some for. That's something,
It's being discussed now,
Yeah.
but it is not in the code at this point in time. It is under discussion with the
the council.
common council.
And the assessment of the 3,000, is that something that also just an advisory to the board to agree with it or disagree with it? Or is that's?
Right now, the way it is set is that if the board can say, all right, maybe not the full 3,000, maybe we'll assess $2,000 a unit. Unless there is a real strong argument for adjusting that fee, this board has historically not done that. They've just assessed the full value. Going forward, the proposal is not to have that option at all. It's going to be one set fee if the change goes through the council.
Oh,
But again, that is not a code or a law that's in place right now. So we have to deal with what the law currently says. And that value would not be set, I'll be honest with you, that value is not going to be set by this board until they issue the final decision. So it would.
Sure,
be
just something
really
that
set
I'd like to
now.
understand, you know.
Yeah,
So since it's up to the board, I guess I'll just say one thing on that. Since 33% of my entire project is going to be affordable, that's why I would ask the board if possible is to exempt the 8 units because 33% of the entire project is and capped with rent.
Has it
So-
ever been modified in the past for a large project like this with affordable housing?
Not for, I don't think we
not
have.
for these larger, like Golden Hill, it was not done. The Washington Avenue was not done that way. So,
Yeah, so from our perspective, we don't want to set a precedent for,
No, I understand.
historically, we've gone with what the Parks and Rec
yeah,
have
the
recommended.
Repco projects paid, Energy Square paid.
But it is interesting that you bring up that question and concurrently there's discussions
Or
going
if they
on.
can just give us a little bit of guarantee that some of that money would be spent on the infrastructure.
So, I mean, it was worth asking the question, but, for me personally, I would step back from modifying or to,
It was just brought up because I was told that it's subject to a board
Understood.
discussion, but I just figured to bring it up. Okay. So one more question. Do you guys in general do conditional approvals or not?
conditional approval?
Those are no conditional approvals?
We would, so what we can do, and I talked to Joe before you actually came tonight, because I know he requested that in a email to us today, and we reviewed that. We don't do a preliminary conditional approval. So we'll table it, and we will just wait for your final.
Yeah, the reason I'm asking.
And
is
then there
because-
are conditions maybe on that final
Yeah.
decision, but
The reason I'm asking because on other towns and cities, we usually, the planning board sometimes, kind of doesn't get too technical into what's required. That's why on our plans, we don't get into, nuts and bolts or everything that's being done there. If that is the case, we would just proceed more with the plans. We are just trying to see. I mean, currently, we actually have this entire package with a couple of contracts just to start getting some prices and getting a budget on the project to see how things are going. So we will know more on the pieces, especially, I'm glad that
right,
we did
actually,
next week.
that's good because you will also want to make sure you put in a detailed cost estimate of all your site improvements. And so
For the
having
bond.
your contractors, right, so and the city engineer will need to review and approve that before this board actually assigns that final value as well.
But yes, we are currently doing that. We
Yeah.
got a few cost estimates on the.
And my comments just before about how the board felt initially really about the waivers and, how we felt about that. And that was basically in response to your email that you sent today, although we can't go as far as to give conditional approval to answer your question with that. I just, I felt it necessary to, and the board seemed to agree, that we were still, happy with how the project was coming around through here. And, if that answers any of your questions, how the funding is going to go. But
I just get to spend his money. I want him.
Well, that's why. It's not because I'm trying to get anything through. It's
Yeah.
that like I have to plan this out accordingly, so.
I think, if you didn't, if early on you were getting a good vibe back from us, you'd be like, yeah, I'm not going to do this. I think that, we've been engaged with you, and I hope that we've given you some,
Yes,
more
I mean, again,
feedback, public
I think
comment
our
feedback.
meeting next week is actually,
Yeah,
it's
so-
a little bit closer to the.
And you have the notes as
I do have
well,
the notes.
so you can start looking at some of the other questions, the smaller, right?
Yes. Again, most of the notes are really not, we can resolve just that we need to talk about even the water and sewer, I don't think they're that big deal. I think the stormwater, to me, it's the stormwater for this project. It's the biggest thing we need to resolve. So, I agree. We can't, we're not here to stress the neighborhood more than what it is right now.
Yeah.
We just want to make sure, at least we're not contributing anymore.
Yeah, and we're gonna rely on what, the city engineer is gonna say about that. So, one more thing, was the Central Hudson gas line that goes through there, the easement?
Well, right now, there's a discussion with this.
That's a huge issue for me right now.
Because, just to throw, the line goes right under where you're gonna,
So the problem is that somewhere, once upon a time, when somebody gave them permission at some point to do that, which they shouldn't have been given permission, I've been talking with them for 1.5 years now. And I just now, last week, got some sort of easement language from them. I've kind of put the pressure on them to tell them this is imminently going to be a thing now, and we need to make sure that we get this moved.
We moved this building a little bit to the south, because
Okay.
that'll allow enough
To get
distance
there.
from here to there, so we can get the line can be picked up here, running across,
So it's
up and back to
this line,
relocate, basically.
where does it go right now?
If you go to page 1,
it's right through.
oh, right there, sorry.
This is the gas.
So this is the gas line that currently exists.
Okay,
The reason we didn't show proposed, because we didn't get a clear language from them, other than I need 10 feet away from the building. So if right now, I got more than that from the building. So if they come in, as you can see, it comes this way. If they pick it up again and they come along the proper line, cross here, up and back up here, they can go and connect to the boulevard the way it is right now. So relocating is a possibility.
The thing is right here, there's a 4-inch main stub at the end. So the plan is to, because this line is essential, this serves Golden Hill and the jail. It's a 6-inch major supply line.
okay.
So what they're gonna do is they're gonna temporarily connect the 6-foot to the 4-foot. And when I'm ready for final 4-inch, when I'm ready for final grading, they'll come in and reconnect it, but it's absolutely essential to their infrastructure, so they have to do it. But again,
So your discussions have been productive, you think, with how you're gauging it, or what?
now they are gonna be getting more productive, but yeah, and they're abandoning the old line in place, so that's something else that I have to.
Not responding as fast as they bill us, so. you know.
Yes, so yes, we're working with them, but that's definitely, their initial response was since we're doing electric and
Well, that's the
Going that
thing.
route, they,
The stretch code, I don't think we can use that.
Yeah.
So it might not need service.
their response was that it's not financially beneficial.
Well, I get it from, yeah. Okay.
Just a quick thing on the lot, since the two objects on the agenda, the lot line change is basically a deletion. We're just consolidating all 3 lots into one main lot. We're giving a right of way to the 2 houses so they can access the same drive and circle, and then their driveways are gonna be basically be just taken out from the main access, so just to clean this up a little bit. That's the part of the lot line revision of the petition.
Yeah, is there, with the parking on this, because I think this is one of the places where the new zoning bites us, because we don't have parking for each unit, is there any way to squeeze a few more in there? Because there's no municipal lots nearby. The only other place would be like on Pettit, which would then impact the neighbors, or going up to Golden Hill and dropping a car, but then you have to cross 32. So is there any way to squeeze a few more in?
I mean, possibly around the circle, I'd have to look at that. I don't, what's the width of your driveway?
That one is 24 feet,
24.
allow for 2 feet and the front apparatus.
Yeah. It's not.
Just type the green space requirement is something we're gonna run into if we do that.
I'd be fine giving up a little green space to get more work.
Yeah, but the grade also doesn't have anything on the side.
Well. We're thinking, yeah,
I mean, parking standards is 9 foot wide by 18. Do we take 3-4 spots and consolidate into a compact car, which is 8 by, so that the width is smaller? Or maybe we can get a few more to do that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's gonna be a big challenge.
I mean, the electric vehicles, we have 2 there at least, they don't need to be 9. I mean, all the electric vehicles, relatively, although they make an F-150 electric now, but no.
right now you have just less than one per unit, correct?
Right now, we have 1 per unit, yes.
Right, but you have like, and so, but you do have some EV, you have 2 EVs and what, 2 handicap, right?
So these are 20, so we're just shy from 1 per unit, yes. 24 units, we have 20.
Right. And how is parking gonna be allocated in any certain way, like, are individuals going to have an option to rent the space, or is it just?
I haven't honestly thought about that,
Okay,
but
okay,
something like that possibly. You know, the goal is to get everyone to use public transit in the code, I guess, so, you know, there'll be the sidewalks that go up, there was talk with the county about putting a bus stop at the end.
Yeah, I think we can like maximize how much parking we can put on.
Maybe for,
At least get one.
I mean, maybe I can get one here.
we can get a couple like over
Maybe I
here.
can squeeze one there. Yeah, I can
Maybe.
squeeze one or 2 couple, you know. Maybe get one more here. I can probably get to the 24, at least one per unit.
It just might get close with that requirement, that's all.
I think 1 per unit should be fine.
Okay.
Or at least have the option for 1 per unit.
that's something else you could do, we've done that in other, under the old code, where the board felt that there was too much parking required, for certain projects, they showed reserved parking held, where there's an area where you can, if you find that once the project is up and running, then there is a need to develop more, then that green space could be converted, but you keep the green to begin with until the need, then. You did that, well, you did that with the old Bluestone Commons, you did that, with Landmark Place up on Flatbush. That whole front area was left. You've done it with smaller projects, you did it next to the Boys and Girls Club with the building that was redone there. So it's been done, and that's been used in other locations. So that may be the way to deal with this here. And see what your need comes up as, and then if there is need, you show that reserved area, they would be required to develop that.
Any other questions from the board?
No, sir.
Just one other thing, I will say that with this project in 615, both of them have submitted their request to the school board for the impact on the school system. We have not heard back from either one, so I did a follow-up memo for you guys for both this project and 615 today to Catalino, asking him about that. So hopefully we'll hear back on that as well.
And as Sue had mentioned, there's a meeting later this month with Water DPW Engineering with the applicants to discuss the issues that were brought up by not only this board, but, you know, the public comment as well. So we'll be happy to interesting to see what comes out of the wake of that meeting. So, again, I hope that you know that we're got a good vibe going here, and I hope that those issues can be resolved, you know, so, yeah. Any other questions from the board? Okay. So at this time, I'll make a motion that we table both items number 2 and 3, and we're going to keep the public hearing open. Is that okay with everybody? Okay. So second on that, second by Matt Gillis. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried.
Thank you, everybody.
That would be your question.
Writing my whole name when I got married, it got shorter and shorter, like it used to bring out the whole thing. So I'm like, I know what, I don't like it's not any longer, I went from Steve Myers to Steve Newkirk, it's not really.
Moving on. Hi, how are you? Good evening. Moving on to item number 4.
We just lived in.
29 Warren Street, it's the, I got this thing here, subdivision of the lands of Warren LLC, section block and lot 56.07-2-11, seeking determination. Transect T4N, Ward 3, Michael Terry III is the applicant, 29 Warren LLC is the owner. We do have some folks signed up to speak. Three of them, as a matter of fact. The first one is Robert Sykes from 28 Warren Street.
Right.
Okay.
All right, thank you all for your time. I live directly across the street from the proposed subdivision. I don't know if you're familiar with Warren Street, but it's a one-block street that runs between Washington and Wall. There's currently 3 multifamily properties on that street, and parking is very limited. A lot of the single-family homes don't have driveways. And in addition to the multifamilies on Warren, there's an ARC home on corner of Warren and Wall, and another multifamily on the opposite side of Warren. So my big concern here is if you allow the subdivision to take place, I can only assume it's for building purposes, and the street cannot handle any more traffic or any more parking. I see that there's a lot of exemptions or in city code where parking is not required in the building code for the permit. However, there is no more room. It's a single lane road as it is now with the single family houses as well as the multifamily.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Sykes. Chris Fronteras,
Yes,
and what's your address, ma'am?
156 St. James.
Okay.
The property goes from the other side of Tannery Brook all the way to, which it won't show on this. The back side of the property where they're trying to divide, that's all owned in one single lot. It was put together. We have a serious issue with runoff of water that comes from Linderman, Washington, Warren. It all floods there. We've had floods that have gone through Zoe's backyard, the house next to it. I've had it almost 40 feet into the property. Luckily, we're 20, 30 feet above the elevation, but it also impacts all the way down. If they choose to put in, where is that water gonna go? Plus, the sewer line that runs down Tannery Brook was built in 1890. When was the last time it was studied? I've seen water bubble out of it because I also get water down St. James and Green. and it's all dumped into there. If they're allowed to put more onto it, where's this water gonna go? It's going to just flood everything because it not only impacts, specifically Zoe, whose property line is right on that. Then it's 156 St. James, then it's 7 Green, then it's, the Nacarrados next door, which we've tried everything to try and stop it, you can't. But if they add more parking, grade it like they say they're going to, where's the water gonna go? There's sewer lines coming from Washington down into that are already running off the houses from Washington that go into that sewer line. And it's overflowed. I can send you videos and photos where it is just gushing. Where's it gonna go? That's the one. It's one of those, where's all this excess water? Because especially if they put in another parking lot, it just runs right off and it runs right into Tannery Brook. We've got another Washington Avenue, like open through a sewer. Boom.
And then driving,
Yes.
17 Warren Street, then your address?
So this is my daughter.
Okay.
We're going to speak together. And
Then what's your daughter's name?
Zoe Harry, she just got married.
Oh, congratulations.
Anyway. So I'm an architect in Houston. You know me. Mark. Anyway, so we bought this during COVID. I bought it so that the youth of America may own a house. So she got the mortgage, I helped her pay for it. We did a huge renovation. It used to be Pat Ryan's grandparents' house, by the way, so everyone knows it was the Porsche's house. And something maybe it'll be a historic site. But anyway, may I go up there? Okay. So the big issue which they were talking about, so here's our house, and here's, it's already a big house, the house that exists there. The lot is from here to here. This has, I think, 5 apartments in it right now.
I believe it's 3.
4 or 5, something like that. This is right here, I'm sorry, our house is here. This is there's a culvert up until about this point. Our house is like here, I wish it was on here, I do have a map on here. So it's tiered, it's 2 layers. So actually, I call this the mogul, right? So this is, ever go skiing and you have moguls. So you start high, you go down, here, you go down. This is very low and all the way back here. It's the lowest point, probably not in Kingston because the stream's still going downstream, but it's the lowest point of this area. We have 5 houses here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all built by the same drunk developer, I think, at the time. And it has a sewer line in the back. That sewer line goes to the manhole cover, the manhole, which is in our yard. That's the old line. There is somehow illegally, this was covered. This is a manhole that should be used, and it's covered right now with asphalt. And I know this because I have Bernier Lair restaurants. So I know that this was a new manhole and a new line. We have backup and a lot of issues with this rear sewer line. It's very old. It's from the 18-something hundreds. And it's sort of my thinking is that when we have stormwater and, these deluges of rain and so on and so forth, we not only get runoff from what here is asphalt onto our top yard. And this is actually before the culvert. The culvert is here. So we're getting this and it backs up into the sewer and it probably backs up into the 5 other houses. And we do have issues, at least once a year, Lao is coming out. Now, the city used to maintain this sewer pipe. They're not doing it anymore. We still have to deal with that as another issue. So there's tons of water issues back here. Part of my concern is that these old pipes here
are also leaching toxins. Toxins out here, and they mix with the water that's coming down here. And I don't think the diversion of the Tannery Brook is actually working, because there really shouldn't be that much water. So we have water coming down here, we have water coming here, and we have sewer leaching, these back sewers, which are back here. So talk about a health issue, talk about, whatever. So that's our concern with this. And if you ever want to visit and see it, or they have photos and they have some, so this is by living through it.
I'm only the surveyor, so I cannot answer any engineering
You're
questions.
only
I
the messenger.
defer everything to Dennis Larry, so I.
Zoe, do you have anything else to say about this?
I
Did
just have
you
a
live it?
couple of videos and photos, I don't know.
Oh, she has a video, if everyone wants to look at it, but. So by putting impermeable or structures here, or, this paving here right now, this asphalt, actually creates a huge problem for us. I don't know what the future plan is. I know developers not going to develop it without really knowing how many apartments. So do you have any idea of how many apartments there is?
As a matter of fact, at this point in time, I believe it's going, he has no plans to develop at this very moment. This is a 2-lot subdivision. Could that lot potentially be sold to a completely separate developer? Yes, absolutely. And then would that have to go through a site plan and building department and all that? Yes, and further public hearings and so on.
Right, sure.
From my aspect of a licensed land surveyor, we have met every bit of the zoning code, including easements, and further on, we have created what has been required of us as a 30-foot wide utility easement for the existing line that is running through there.
Why don't you just make that part, let's make that part of your presentation. We
Yeah.
got the public comment already.
So-
That you don't have to repeat.
Okay,
yourself.
no problem.
So I do have a question about the easement. Is this a non-possessory interest in the land, meaning that the easement holder does not own the property? I don't know who this is going to.
No, he'll own all of it. And then
They'll hold on.
the owner, he'll hold it, and the city will have the right to maintain their line through here. Both lots will have the right to ingress and egress there.
Okay. There were a couple of things that I saw on, where is it? Right here. I can't read it. So it looks like you're asking for a less than 3-foot side yard? Or was that a mistake?
No, I don't believe so.
It says, because it says you're supposed to have greater than, but then yours has the less.
Maybe it was the sign, maybe it was the less than versus greater than
Okay, I don't
sign.
know if anyone caught that,
Yeah,
but.
that could very well be the
It shows that it's
situation.
looking for less than 3 feet.
No, it would be, we met, so according to my charts here, we have met all of the zoning requirements. If it was a typo, that could very well be,
Yeah.
but we have no outstanding,
Yeah, so you just might have to change that to side yard, greater than required, but then you have less than proposed. So I was curious, like, where's that less than 3 feet?
So Robert, with all your questions, are you finished with all your questions? Or
just-
I'm gonna let him do his presentation, and
Sure.
maybe that'll answer a lot of the questions that you have.
Just one more thing. Okay, I do believe this is still considered wetlands. And the Tannery Brook, because some of the grasses look like wetlands, so the answer was no on here. And then the other thing is, hold on, one more thing. Will it propose stormwater? You wrote no. Of course, I said, yes, it will, it will, but not your subdivision, but in the future. So anyway, I'm done.
Okay.
I have one more question, sorry.
Okay.
Just a quick one. On the other side of the property, there are sewer lines that are running from the houses from Washington down because it runs through the property, and that's why they cannot be developed. Is in fact there are there laterals coming from Washington?
we discussed this and John said no.
No.
Yeah.
So we asked the city engineer that question because someone had made that statement. So we asked the city engineer and he said there are none.
Okay, so it just starts on the other side of the property. Got it. Thank you.
So I'm gonna give you guys a real quick overview. I basically already.
Is there anybody else wishing to speak?
I just wanted to show the videos and.
I think if we send them to Sue rather than hold up and everybody gets the phone around.
You can send them to, so it can be circulated through that, but I believe what you're saying there. So you got videos of water.
Flooding.
Yeah,
Yes, and the only other question I did have is if that's still his property, is he responsible for maintaining the brook and cleaning it out? Because to this point, it has not been, which I think is contributing to part of the flooding. Also, not that it's flooding related, but the hedges, I go and trim his hedges because they're overgrown. So the brook, is he responsible to continue maintaining that? Or is it the
Well, that's
city's?
more of a building department, with the overgrown brushes, that's a building safety issue there.
Well, that's public works.
No,
Public works, right? Maintenance of the brook. Is that,
No,
that is what we.
I'm specifically talking about shrubbery.
Well, the brook is my bigger concern, which is now going to be part of the easement.
I don't believe we'd even be allowed to put a shovel in that by DEC standards. We wouldn't even be allowed to touch that. That's my belief. You cannot go in there and start cleaning out the Tannery Brook, one of the oldest brooks in Ulster County, without having some kind of formal permit to do so.
Well,
So.
Mike, do you want this map up or do you want?
It doesn't really matter because it's going to be so brief. 50-foot wide, 2-lot subdivision, 50-foot wide common drive easement to get to the back, 30-foot wide utility easement as requested by the city. We meet all other zoning standards. I'll take a look at a larger copy when I get home if there was the greater or less than was something messed up. But no, we do meet all zoning standards. Again, there is no parking zoning standards, but there is existing parking there. And could there be a potential for more? Yes, we have 0.389 acre in the water and sewer district in the city, which is obviously one of the biggest lots with probably 1,000-foot radius. It would be hard to deny a development of any sort with regards to the amount of space we have, not to mention that the whole reason that everything has happened as of August 23 was that we are, indigent in terms of housing here in Kingston. So that's the whole purpose of the form-based code. So that is basically the gist of it. Any engineering questions can be forwarded to Dennis. Dennis has done a deep look into this for us. So from a surveying standpoint, I meet all standards. Dennis can answer questions regarding anything with, sewer connections, Tannery Brook, and then when the time comes for some type of study regarding stormwater, that'll be Dennis's department also.
Can you expand on the 30-foot easement?
30-foot easement was.
Can you show there?
So the 30-foot is going to be all the way through here.
And that has to do with the brook, right?
That has to do with the requirements from John in the engineering department asking us, and there's a sewer line running through there, correct.
Okay. The city has to get in there, they can get in there to do stuff. So
Right, the
that's-
easement, the easement that you see on here is only 30 feet on this gentleman's property. It doesn't extend onto any other property. John, since this is going through the process now, John recognized that the city does not have an easement over Tannery Brook, and really they should, to afford them the ability to get in there and do maintenance that's required. So he requested the 30-foot be put onto the map at this time. So
And this whole presentation, there's nothing proposed to be built at this time?
No.
Okay. So I'm just looking through my notes here. The applicant is aware that any construction on this vacant lot will likely require review by the planning board. Okay, so all the issues that the public has brought up tonight, a lot of the issues, right?
if someone were to put a single family back here, that would not come to the planning board.
What?
Anything over 3 units would come
Over
to the
3?
planning board.
Okay.
Right, but under 3 is strictly building department. And obviously, they still have to apply whatever standards are in the form-based code or in other codes of the city. Like there is a stormwater, code in the general administrative language. And I believe that would have to be applied, all of the plumbing code, electrical code.
So if a single family home was put on here and building safety is dealing with that proposal, is dealing with that, they would be looking at the brook and all of that stuff in there where the building can actually be put. Is that correct?
Correct, yes.
But we're not dealing with a building going on. This is just a subdivision.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just for the easement, because that's part of the subdivision. I believe I had asked you this question before, but on the easement in the new lot, can parking be put on there?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, well, right now, the parking lot for the current structure is in that 30-foot
How
easement,
close
so.
can they get to the brook, because the brook's right there. So, and.
I don't think parking would go there anyway. I mean, just in my opinion, with the amount of space we have there, if parking was gonna go anywhere, it would probably be more in this area back in here in the back of this house. Not along the edge of the brook there, because that would require, earthwork and retaining and so on. I don't believe that's financially feasible for a development, especially if it's only a single family home or a two-family home. That wouldn't really make a whole lot of sense. But again, that can all be approached when the building, permit is submitted.
Do you know for a fact that that's not considered wetlands
It's not shown on the,
in the plantings?
yeah, and if it was, it would show up in the EAF, I believe. And you reviewed the EAF, correct? Because you just mentioned that it said no on the stormwater, and the only place you would have got that was from the
Yeah, I'm
EAF.
just questioning.
That's, if it would have shown up, because that comes from the New York State EAF map. So that's actually generated by New York State. I only fill in the blanks on the ones that aren't answered.
So nothing's building right now. So we're just looking at the subdivision, okay? And I appreciate the public's comments and concerns, and I know your neighbors, you are neighbors over there, so I'm not, I'm with you on that, so. All right, any questions from the board? Anything else, Sue, your punch list? Under seeker, it's an unlisted action, so there's a short environmental assessment form that staff has indicated is in order. At this time, I will make a motion that we approve it. Do I have a second? Second by Vince Archer. Okay, we're gonna do a roll call vote. Wayne Platt Jr. is a yes. Charles Palaco.
Yes.
Matt Gillis.
Yes.
Vince Archer.
Yes.
Sage Newkirk.
Yes.
Okay, that is passed. So you're compiling a list of
Give me a second.
conditions and. Okay. All right, so at this time, I make a motion, Sue's gonna go over the conditions of it, that we approve item number 4. And
So it would be with board policy 6 on the final plat. There will be 5 paper copies and 1 Mylar copy signed by the owner prior to the chairman's signature. Resultant parcel descriptions will be submitted for review and final approval, and that will include language for the easements, which are both to the city and then to the 2 new property owners, as well as those will have to get filed with the county with the maps.
okay, so that is a motion. Do I have a second on that? Second by Sage Newkirk. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried. Thank you, folks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
I'm gonna stick around for the next two.
Okay.
The cracks.
Yes.
Okay, good.
No, I did. I actually told them it would probably be a half hour. That's like an hour ago, so I think we're.
Okay, they did, we live here now.
Yeah.
Did you bring your car?
I'm falling asleep. It's actually, it's about 10 degrees hotter in this room than it is.
Yep.
Item number 5 is 98 Moore Street, subdivision of the lands of Ann Craig and Thomas Allen Craig Jr. Section block and lot is 56.27-3-11. Secret determination, transect zone T3N, Ward 7. Michael Terry, third is the applicant. Ann Craig and Thomas Allen Craig Jr. are the owners. Anybody wishing to speak on item number 5? Other than Okay.
I'll make this one
Michael Terry
short.
here Again.
I'm gonna make this one quick for you. This one is basically cut and dry, 2-lot subdivision. Lot 1 is 0.142 acre, lot 2 will be 0.126. We do not have any coverage issues. I believe, without having to make Tyler scroll, I believe we were like way below the cover. It was 22.5% was the coverage on this, so it's less than 50. The only kicker here is that we have a 12-foot wide sewer line easement. The sewer line was marked out by Lau a few weeks ago. We came out, we mathematically located it. We put a 12-foot easement in there. This allows them to connect to the manhole down here. Water is fed off of Moore Street. And there is also water on First Avenue. So our new lot will connect with utilities from First Avenue onto the lot, onto the vacant lot. Client will retain the home lot and client will look to eventually sell the vacant lot.
Yeah. Okay, like you said. Any questions from the board? All right. Thank you. Under seeker, this is an unlisted action, so a determination of environmental significance will need to be rendered. We have a short environmental assessment form. Staff has indicated is in order. This time I make a motion that we approve it. Second on that, second by Sage Newkirk. Wade Platt is a yes. Charles Palaco?
Yes.
Matt Gillis?
Yes.
Vince Archer?
Yes.
Sage Newkirk?
Yes.
Okay, that is passed. All right. So I'll make a motion that we approve item number 5 with,
Okay, so once again, board policy 6 will have to be included on the final plat map. Resultant parcel descriptions will need to be submitted for the new properties and approved by staff, and the sewer easement must be written into those descriptions. For each, we'll need 5 paper and 1 Mylar copy of the final plat with the owner's signature before the chairman will sign.
okay, that is a motion. Do I have a second on that? Second by Chuck Palaco. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried. Great.
Just getting the next one in
Yeah.
order. I know you guys want to keep moving here. Let me just make sure that it's ready here.
This is Bruce Stone. Are you speaking tonight? Oh,
Oh, come on, slide in.
All right, item number 6 is 21 Bluestone Court, subdivision of the lands of SSLI Holdings LLC, and creation of a walkable neighborhood plan with a minor waiver for a dead-end street. Secret determination. Section block and lot is 56.88-4-7. Transect zone SD-MF, large site standards.
I'm just saying, is anybody else going to speak? I just want to. Yeah.
Okay. SSLI Holdings LLC is the applicant, or is it Ward 1?
That's. No one.
Okay, we have three speakers. First one is Michael Simper, did I pronounce that correctly? From 38 Bluestone.
Hi, thank you for your time. There's a lot of kids on our road. And from the plans that I see that there's all the street parking. Now my understanding is that the units are multiplied, and there's physically no space to put the cars. So I'm worried about the overspill and some of these.
Okay. Thank you. Sarah Pasty from 15 Alcazar Avenue.
Yes, I'm behind you.
Yeah. I'm eyeballing you right now.
So basically, as all of you, I spoke at the last public hearing and I was addressing the issue of density that was just brought up here. I wanted to add that when I went through and did the math, and if this development is fully built out the way that it's planned to with multiplexes and duplexes, there would be a total of 46 units. And 46 units at the full build out is the same number of units that was there for the apartment complex that was approved. Now that was approved, but there were over 70 parking spaces that were there with the 46 apartment units. That was still too many units, but that already happened. But in this case, there are 46 units proposed with what I can't even tell the number of parking spaces. It looks like there's actually no parking because the code requires no parking. And this I see is a really serious defect in the code, which I am planning to address going forward. But, you know, we have that since I don't know whether, well, you're the planning board, so you can determine whether you want to have that kind of density, because that kind of density is really going to cause a huge problem. As this gentleman just said, there's very limited parking on Bluestone Court. Not only that, there is absolutely no street parking, no on-street parking on Lucas Avenue in any direction. So where are all of these cars going to go? If they anticipated 70 cars for 46 units in the initial proposal, where are these cars going to go? What I would like to say is, I would like to mention what was said in the Ulster County Planning Board recommendations. They also noted parking. And I think parking is a theme of tonight, as I listen to all of these other proposals that are here. The Ulster County Planning Board said this in their advisory comment. While it noted the presence of on-street parking, the number of units that could potentially be developed was a concern, and the adequacy of parking to serve each unit was an issue. It is worth exploring for garage and or parking space development. So it's very clear that the Ulster County Planning Board sees the same issue that the neighbors in Ward 1 see. In other words, too many units, not enough parking. And okay, the other thing that concerned me is, in addition to there not being any parking, I started doing a little research about what a walkable neighborhood plan actually is. And it said that a walkable neighborhood plan is intended to create and reinforce walkable settlements with a mix of housing, civic, retail, and service uses within a compact, transit-supportive environment. This is how they describe walkable neighborhood plan. Then earlier in Article 1, in the definition of a walkable neighborhood, it says it includes the phrase the ability to safely and comfortably access amenities by foot. So later in the code, it says that walkable neighborhood plans should promote development patterns that support safe, effective, and multimodal transportation options and reduce vehicle traffic by providing a mixture of land uses, walkability, and compact community form. You know, in truth, it is impossible to walk from Bluestone Court to really anywhere. You know, there are no sidewalks in addition to there being no on-street parking. And if you're talking about easy access to retail and service uses in the area, the only stores that are within walking distance, if you dare to walk on Lucas Avenue, are a spirit shop, a gas station, a liquor store, a Chinese restaurant, and an Italian restaurant. This does not constitute, you know, a neighborhood that's walkable in terms of services, access to services, and retail. So I'm a proponent of increased density, but my feeling is if you're gonna have increased density, it needs to be in a neighborhood where you actually have the opportunity for people to access services and retail. Midtown, for example, if this, in a city, in our, would be in a place like Midtown or Uptown, where there actually are amenities that are there that people can walk to. But Kingston has a lot of outlying neighborhoods that are really not walkable to anywhere. And, and this is one of those instances where this is really not walkable. I don't see any sidewalks. I don't see any dedicated parking. So this is going to create traffic density. It's going to create danger. And I would say also that the surrounding neighborhoods also, there are no sidewalks. And these are very narrow streets. So if there are children who are going to be living in any of these 46 units, they're going to have to face the same challenges that the students who have to cross Lucas Avenue already face. And I get calls all the time about the danger of kids crossing Lucas, walking down the streets to go to the Bailey and the Edson School. There is no safe path to walk to school. So you're talking about putting in 46 units and the neighborhood just cannot support them. So, I understand that you have the final decision, but that means that you can approve whatever the regulatory plan is. Now, I have a question about that too, because from my understanding, and I could be wrong, once there's a regulatory plan set, that's what's going to be built unless somebody applies for a waiver. So it means that if somebody were to buy one of the 15 lots that are for sale and want to build a single family home, they would have to go through the process of getting a waiver. So I'm saying if we can't, well, first of all, I'd like to see more parking, but I'd like to see the density reduced to a point where it's actually bearable by this neighborhood. And that's something that you can do, is to come up with a reasonable density that's not going to have a terrible impact on the neighborhood and for the new people who might move in, because it's not set up. This neighborhood is just really not set up for density. There's nowhere to walk, nowhere to park. Oh, not only that, there is not a single bus. Thank you for that. Because there is no bus that goes down Lucas, so that even if you wanted to take the bus to go somewhere, there's no bus. So you're really stranded there because you can't walk. If you can't, if you can't drive, if you can't park, and then there's no bus to take. So I'm just asking for you to consider, that this is really serious. Even the apartment at least has 70 parking spaces. This has none that are required. So this I see as a problem. So I'm asking for you to really consider what is a reasonable amount of density to go onto this site. So that's my comment.
And you're sticking to it.
What?
And you're sticking to it.
As I said, I approve, density is a great thing in the right appropriate place. This is not an appropriate place for increased density. So thank you very much for listening, and I'll now cede to the next speaker.
Amy Peterson from 230 Lucas Avenue.
I concur. Everything she said, ditto. I have the same concerns. It is a dangerous street. I mean, I was saying, I don't even let my kids bring garbage out or mow the lawn because people fly on Lucas Avenue. So, if the parking is not included, then you've got people living there, who have no choice but to nowhere. But my concern is living down the hill from there is that I have a stream that runs through the back of my house, and all through to Browning Terrace. And so I would hope that whatever they do, whatever gets developed, that it's built up so that there's not more flooding. Because that is my concern. I mean, right now it's bad and I don't need to be worse. That's all. Because she's.
Thank you. Is there anybody else wishing to speak on this item?
My name is John Dowley, I live at 262 Lucas Avenue. And my point is, again, I concur about the parking and the density. The egress or exit that goes to Lucas Avenue, that path, or if it's going to be a road, I'm not sure it's going to be a road, but in reading what the county planning board said, they would put small lights there, what they're called, bollard lights. So it would become a path or a walkway, needing a sidewalk. I don't know, as a kid, I would always take the most direct route to school. So people, young people here in this environment would walk directly down that roadway to Lucas Avenue. There is no easy access to school other than going to your right, heading down toward down Lucas Avenue, and then crossing Lucas to go up, here's Forsyth. Not Forsyth, but what's the cross street there?
Boulder, Catskill, Golf. That's the one. Voorhees, Burhans. It's one.
They walk down about 25 feet, actually cross Lucas Avenue, and go up to the school. That would be the most direct route. That's the way I think most kids would go. So I'm wondering about that. And also, again, question the density. We are not opposed to development. Never have been. But I think the appropriate development is an issue that the planning board should be concerned with. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else wishing to speak? Okay. Where's yours?
Okay.
How are you? Just introduce your team again, Luke.
Luke Interante, one developers, my partner Stephen Sanzi, and surveyor Mike Vittori here tonight. So yeah, we got the Ulster County Planning Board comments, we got some staff notes, I think those are being updated. So we're basically right in the process of updating the plans. We've done a lot since the last meeting in terms of our workshop meeting and also the planning board meeting, cutting the radius down at the end for emergency vehicles, garbage trucks, that sort of thing that came up with engineering and DPW. Developing the center median area with the sidewalk and benches and whatnot as requested. Also showing the what will be a required driveway into each lot and kind of the parameters around that, overlapping the buildable footprint area. New soil test data for drainage as requested by the city engineer, because our test holes were a couple of years old at this point. So lighting plan based on some feedback from planning board staff on pole types and whatnot. So we have an updated photometric. So basically most all the comments we've received to date in some form or another being updated on the plan set. And we didn't want to share that sort of half progress here, just kind of late in the process, before that was kind of fully baked out. So we want to get that to you in advance of the next meeting, probably in another week and a half or 2 weeks.
So the driveway's on here?
The next iteration, yeah, the driveways will be there.
Okay.
We're figuring out how to basically do that, but we discussed and agreed to make those mandatory. So they'll be kind of deeded part of the covenant and restriction that a driveway has to be.
Well, is there the property line go right down the middle of the driveways, will it be? How's that?
No, they'll basically they can be within the setback.
Okay.
So for example, on this lot here, you might have it run, right down here, and it'll be deep enough that you could at least fit one car, if not two, beyond the front plane of the house as required by code.
So each property will have one.
Each property will be required to have a driveway. And then from there, of course, as long as they meet all the other requirements for the buildable area building, it could be a garage put in, an ADU, something like that. Some people may want to go deeper with the driveway, but a minimum requirement to at least allow a vehicle per lot be parked and meet zoning with the depth. And plus, we have street parking, obviously, on both sides. One thing to note is originally we had our drainage collection areas at the edge of the pavement along the lots. And since we came up with this to alleviate the issue of the close, we've relocated all of those collection areas to the center median. So we're no longer limited only by the exception of the driveway curb cuts for street parking, where previously it was tight because we had the catchment areas plus a driveway. So now it'll be, you know, more reminiscent of a city block with 50-foot lots and a driveway.
And what is the makeup of the number of small multiplexes and the duplexes? What's the?
It is, I think we have a table here, maybe not on this sheet, the total count, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 8 small multiplexes.
Good. Can you provide a layout of where those buildings are going to be? Like, do you have?
Yeah, I mean, I think that came up last time briefly. I mean, essentially, there's a buildable area defined there. So in combination with, on one of our other sheets here, we have the street design, which has the required setback from street, basically a section view of that street type with the house shown for where everything has to be in proximity to the street line.
I think what Wayne is referring to is to do like a design, like a typical design potential for both a duplex and a small multiplex on one of these lots. So pick 2 lots and just do like what could be a typical design for each of those style buildings using the parameters of the form-based code. So for lot coverage and setbacks and putting in a driveway and just kind of showing us a site plan for like what.
So could we do that on we have some lot examples on one of these sheets?
Yeah.
Where it's kind of blown up a little bit more?
Yes.
Just plan view of that footprint and driveway.
Right,
layout?
yes, yeah. So
Because each
that's-
one of those properties can handle either one, right? Is that the?
No, each.
No, they have to be, go ahead.
Yeah, when you do the regulating plan, this walk through the walkable neighborhood, each of these properties is designated for a particular building type.
Okay.
So they have labeled now using 2 building, they're required to use 2 building types at a minimum. Okay, they can do more if they choose, but 2 is a minimum. So they've chosen to go with duplex and small multiplex, which are allowed in the T3N. And so each of those lots has either duplex or small multiplex tagged to them. And when this map gets ultimately approved and done, that actually transfers to the zoning code. So if a parcel is sold and it says duplex, that is what gets built there. If
But they can go down and not up,
no,
right?
you can't go down. If the new owner wanted to build a single family or going down, all right, they would have to come back to the planning board and change the regulating plan.
So you'll have 8 small multiplexes and 7 duplexes.
That's what we're proposing. So yes, we'll elaborate on those example lots. Wayne, to answer your question, to show some layouts.
I mean, if we can just, I mean, this is suggestion, like to suggest to the folks who are going to be building these, units to encourage more off-street parking in there. So, encourage a garage, I think that would go a long way with the parking issues.
Yeah, I mean, I would expect most people would want to do that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
To do that in the regulating plan. But
We
I'll check that.
We can or we
Yeah,
can't?
you might be able to do that within the
Oh, okay.
regulating plan itself.
Okay.
You can get very specific.
A note for a traffic circulation plan. Do we have, is there? Was on there, is there, was that part of our notes?
I think that was a county comment.
Yeah.
Is that part of the standard two-way design?
Truck access, fire notification. that one. Page 1.
Oh, okay, yeah.
That was on the county notes, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, so there are some required modifications there.
Yeah.
As well as advisory, so the required ones will have to be individually addressed by the board. But you'll prepare responses, I'm presuming.
You will have that for the next meeting, that's what we're going to.
Yeah, we'll provide a response to the Ulster County Planning Board recommendation letter and some of
What
the
is, I mean, what are some of the, what are the board, I'd like to hear some of the board members' thoughts on some of the issues that were raised tonight to get a sense of what you're thinking in terms of, they presented a new roadway pattern here versus, kind of a circular one-way path to create a central median. And that removes one of the requirements under the form-based code with dead-end streets. They still do need a minor waiver for a dead end though. But in terms of density and parking and some of the other issues that were raised, stormwater, do you have any thoughts? I'd like to hear members' thoughts.
It's a question of parking. We're gonna have space between the two lots, big enough to handle one vehicle or two vehicles. Well, the two vehicles would be just the depth of the lot.
Right, yeah, and it's not it's not really between the two lots, it's essentially, if you took a 50 by 100 lot and just plopped it anywhere in the city, that owner could encroach on the easement for their driveway and run their driveway right up to the lot line into their property, 10, 12 foot width, and then as deep as.
There's no limitation on where the lot line is in terms of.
No, you can go right up to the lot line with the.
Right up, okay.
Mhm. So that's the thought there, is make those required.
So technically speaking, if we just had one parking space per lot and one on-street parking spot per lot, we would technically have 30 parking spaces right off the bat. Now, take into consideration if 5 lots have a garage, that adds an extra car. So then the numbers are going up. So it's not like we're proposing no parking. But then again, as we've continually gone through, there is no real parking requirement. I understand it goes with density, but at the same time, I mean, it's not like this is going to be an open to no parking. There is definitely going to be parking at least 2 spots per lot as a driveway is required.
And with a 50-foot wide lot, conceivably, you can get 2 cars taking up 40 of that feet if each car is 20 feet long, 10 foot for the driveway.
Yeah.
So they are perpendicular to the lot.
This is a traditional Kingston Street, 50 by 100 lots with driveways.
Because of the style of the walkable neighborhood plan or any neighborhood plan, really, there's not a separate area for parking. It's different from an apartment complex. To that point, you have on-street parking like you would anywhere else, and then the required driveways will guarantee, like said.
We had talked also about some added sidewalk down the central median. Have you given any further thought to that?
That's actually developed and on the most current set, so
Okay.
you'll get that. We have
Okay,
sidewalk all the way down the center. Couple more bench areas, I think, are reconfiguring the bench areas and that sort of
Okay.
thing. So that came out of
Alright.
the workshop meeting to address that.
okay.
Well, 2 vehicles per building, yes, that'll add. But what about when visitors come? Then you get the fire trucks and they're all loaded in there, they can't.
What's the unit count for the small multiplexes again?
With small multiplex.
8.
it's 4 in the T3N, right? 4
So
and then
it's
2.
Minimum of 3.
They're talking about units in this.
How many do we have here?
Right.
Bonus if you have.
Yeah, we just talked about how many
6
units can we put in.
But the cars are only parking on one side of the street, right? They're not parking up against the median too.
Not against the median, no, basically along the property line on both sides.
I mean, how different is it than my street that has half the houses having driveways? You're gonna get a fire truck down the middle of my road. This isn't set, I mean, to be perfectly honest, it's not set up much different than if you're, I'm at the corner of Elizabeth and Marius, it's not much different than if you're trying to get down, with a fire truck down to my house at the end. Are you gonna come from Marius, you're gonna come from Elizabeth, but you're still gonna have cars on both sides regardless. It's not any different than any of the neighborhoods that my daughter's walking through to get from Elizabeth Street over to Bay Lane.
And this design has already gone through the fire department's filter, right? This is part of,
Yeah,
were
Chris is
involved
been
in
reviewing
that.
it.
No, that design is one way, you go in, you go one way, and you go around a circle.
Yeah.
So that design probably for Mary's, where you live, is more room there than
Oh,
here.
100%, you're gonna have a better, easier time getting down this than you are getting down Marius.
You get more than enough room to get down, you get more than enough room to have a ladder truck out there. So,
They can only send the little school bus down Marius, we can't get the big one down there.
you get everything out there.
I just asked a question.
No, that's a good question, and I know people do it one way, going around.
And we've shortened the end of that median, based on conversation with the chief of DPW, just about the larger trucks. So it's even an easier, radius for them to navigate.
And honestly, this is no different than Hurley Crossings, when we had the other night, where both fire trucks were on both sides.
Hmm.
Yeah, we all arrived at the same spot.
May I ask if the streets you're comparing this to are multi-unit homes or single-family homes?
the early
Streets you were
crossings,
just,
early crossings is multifamily.
The representation is Lafayette Street.
Lafayette, I don't know that offhand. I'm just asking for density, if you have 4 units per building, with 4 adults living there that each have a vehicle, and you only have 2 spots for off-street parking, you're gonna have more cars on the street than what you're anticipating.
Or what would you do if you had a 4-bedroom house with 2 adult kids, 2 adults, and their friends over with cars and everything like that?
And no driveway. A lot. Let's be honest, there's many homes in the city.
That's a great question. So where would those people park if they're not able to park on this street? If you're planning for the density, plan for the parking.
But that again goes back
Parking's
to
not.
this code has no parking regulations. And we
That
keep,
doesn't mean you can't plan.
we keep tripping over that. I feel like that's the holdup month after month after month.
You do have the ability to ask for it.
For yeah, and we discussed that too last month, but that is the continual go back and what's continually holding us up here. So I think the frustration for us guys is coming from, the lack of being able to get a solid answer to that from the board. because you guys, very honestly, don't have the literature to read to tell us what to do. So a lot of it has to come with somewhat of a guessing game. So, and this is the situation that we, not just this project, but all the other projects that have came through here tonight are having that issue. So,
I mean, we're trying to offer suggestions on how to alleviate the problems of.
And honestly, I totally am with you and understand that. And I think whoever stood up here before and spoke and said that the city needs to look at adding some kind of parking there, that's into the code is totally correct, because it's just a stumbling block to keep us here continually as we feel, it's.
Something's gonna go here, but we need to, we're having a dialogue.
Yeah.
To try to, take into account the public's concerns, the concerns of this board, and, your final dollar. I get that.
Yeah.
How it's gonna, how to make this profitable for the applicant. And, to try to maximize the amount of cars that we're taking off the street so that.
I think that was our intention, based on the last meeting, to make the driveways required as part of the regulating plan, because that really wasn't on the table before. And we heard that concern, and that's one thing we can do, and put that in the regulating plan to help alleviate the problem. Short of, beyond that, I don't know what else, again, City Street, very similar to many neighborhoods. The city is made up of single family and multi-unit, one next to the other, all over the place.
Like the last project, there was a give and take, from not everybody got what they wanted,
Of course.
and
Yeah.
this probably gonna be the same thing. So, it's a negotiation, right? So-
Absolutely,
and
absolutely.
So,
If there's a way to work in, garages, so you're pointing to the regulating plan, we're all for, making a certain number of the lots require that, or kind of plotting those out.
and let's visit the term, the walkable neighborhood plan. That is just germane to this enclave, isn't it? I mean, this is the walkable neighborhood here. This is right, I know that there's concerns about there's no sidewalks on Lucas. There's only a few stores around that we can walk to, kids cross, I get it. I didn't want my daughter riding on Lucas Avenue today with her bike, so I get it. But just to make it clear that the walkable neighborhood plan is just for this enclave, right? This is.
Yeah, we can only be in control of our site, right? And that's, in the new code, that's something that we can use on this property to get essentially a subdivision with a lot more detail required to get the subdivision. So that's the route.
And the form-based code is trying to encourage this, right? So even though there's not infrastructure around to have some, accommodate kid walkers on Lucas Avenue, maybe it's something that in the future the city can say, let's put a sidewalk up there, let's us do it, and, connect these walkable neighborhoods so everything is walkable. So, it has to start somewhere, and I get the concerns of Sarah, I get your concern, I get it.
Okay.
All right, but I just want to make it clear that this walkable neighborhood plan is just for this site.
Absolutely. Yep. And we're following the code with that intent. To your point, in the future, we don't know what's going to happen, what the connectivity will be.
It has to start somewhere, right? I mean,
So, may I ask a question, or is that out of line?
go ahead.
Okay. So I think one of the things that was upsetting to my neighbors is that originally, the developer had spoken to me about this being single-family homes and duplexes. So I guess, and now this was sort of a big surprise for all of us when we found out it was multiplexes and duplexes. So I guess I have a question as to, does the board have the ability to ask for a reduced number of, so say instead of 8 multiplexes, maybe 3 multiplexes, and then the rest are duplexes, some way to reduce the density so that if somebody wanted to increase it, they would have to get a waiver, as opposed to if they want to reduce it, they have to get a waiver.
Yes.
So the board does
answer to your
have.
question is yes. Yeah, because the board ultimately will approve the final plan, which will have each individual
What
parcel
describe when each lot, what will be
Right.
on each lot.
indicated as to what building type. Yeah.
So it doesn't need to be as dense as 8 multiplexes.
The board can make adjustments.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, any comments? Andrew, thoughts?
Well, so we're talking, so these lots there are 50 by 100, so it's 2 cars in front. If a driveway can fit 2 cars, that's 4 cars per lot. Which, or I guess,
14.
Yeah, give or take.
yeah,
I mean, we have,
So let's just take the duplex. So that would be 2 driveways or 1 driveway? For the duplex lots?
one.
It's one driveway that could house 1 to 2 cars, plus 2 spots in front of the lot.
And potentially garage, depending.
Yeah.
I would at least 2-car driveway.
I think with a 2-car driveway and a 50-foot wide lot.
No, it's part front and back, not side to side.
Oh, yeah.
Like stacked?
Yeah.
that's fine, yeah, that's fine.
At least on the multiplexes. I don't know if it matters as much on the duplexes. You could have a 1-car drive on the duplexes and then 2 on-street parking spots, still have an extra parking spot. But on the small multiplexes, to have a stacked 2-car driveway at least with 2 spots in front, that gives you your 4 spots.
And Sue, you mentioned that the parking could be in the back of the property as well.
Yes.
Yeah. So if somebody decided to put
The
parking
thing
in the
that
back
is
of the
going
property.
We're saying at a minimum, a 2-car stacked driveway on the.
At a minimum, that's the plan, is to show that on the lots and require it as part of the regulating plan that each lot at a minimum provides a driveway that has the depth for 2 cars.
Yeah, right. So the tricky thing is that each lot has a percent of lot coverage percentage. So that's not only the footprint of the building, but it's any other impervious surface, such as a driveway or a garage or patio or a pool or a
I
shed.
was just thinking about
But
how some
then you've got required open
duplexes
space
that
too
parking
with
is in
each
the
lot.
back.
So,
There's a shared driveway and you go back and.
The one right across from Irving Place there, that one?
Yeah, there's 2 duplexes right there, and they have a shared driveway that go to the back, over the garage and sort of.
Where are you with, I know your ultimate plan is to dedicate this to the city street. So where are you with that?
I think with our next plan set, we'll have addressed any concerns between fire department, DPW, water and sewer, we've discussed in length. We've made modifications to the utility plan per Matt Dissert and DPW on sewer. So I think we'll be in good shape. You know, I know John's going to want to review again, the updated plan set and comments, but it seems like it's going along well.
this table, and then I would not losing here.
No. I thought that was what I was going to ask you.
That's something that's the board.
Yeah, so I'm inclined to keep the public comment period open. That's fine. Is that board feel the same?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions from the board right now? Oh, what? That's right here, right?
Yeah.
Well, we're gonna be seeing the fire department a little bit. All right, so I digress. So at this time, I'll make a motion that we table item number 6. Yes, I think that's a motion. Do I have a second on that? Second. Yeah, keep it open. Yes. Sage with a second on that. All in favor? Aye, opposed? Carried. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You too. Okay. He certainly had everything. That's here.
Thank you all.
And thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Are we on number 7? Yeah, we're on.
Seems like such a delicious lunch today of donuts.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I changed my shirt.
I did it. I still smell the cake.
We have to.
This is the uncomfortable pause right now, okay?
Oh, that's great.
We're good? Oh, Alice, all right.
Yes.
Oh, okay. So there were one of those. That was something.
Maybe the cleaner down there to smell.
Well, we did turn the letter on. So I feel like we're getting closer.
Yeah, we are on item number 7. 46 and 52 Grand Street and 488 Hasbrook Avenue, lot line revision of the lands of Kingston City Land Bank Incorporated. Section block and lot is 56.26-8-46, 47, and 48. Secret determination, transect zone T5F, Ward 5, Kingston City Land Bank Incorporated. Is Steve moved. Anybody besides Kingston Land Bank? I do. I see nobody wanting to speak.
Yeah.
Well, they left already. So might as well do it at the end.
Do it at the end.
Okay, fire away.
All right, I will try to be brief. Thank you very much for your time. My name is Mike Gilliard. I'm the Executive Director of the Kingston City Land Bank, which is not the Kingston Land Trust. We're all confused with the Kingston Land Trust. We don't have great social media. We're a public authority that started 5 years ago, rehabbing properties purchased from the city of Kingston through the disposition policy as affordable homeownership. So we're the only affordable homeownership provider in the city. At the end of the year, when we finish the 2 rehabs that we've been working on since the beginning of this year, there will be 15 homes that have been placed back on the tax rolls as affordable homeownership in a 5-year period. So in the spirit of that, we applied for, under the city's public request for proposals, our proposal for 46 grand, which was previously the Grand Slam Bar. That sits in the middle of the 2 rehabs that we had ongoing. So now we're at the point where we have these 2 rehabs almost complete. They will be done in July of this year. We'd like to sell them as affordable homeownership as quickly as possible. We try to move as quickly as possible. That is the reason for the request, to move the lot lines. The secondary reason for the request, which is obviously the theme of tonight, relates to what are we doing at 46 grand? We don't know exactly yet. The council thankfully awarded us based on our proposal, which included either 10 townhome units with 1 rental and 1 home ownership, if the subsidies were available and if that were a viable option for us. But our preference would be to work with a condo or a co-op model, affordable home ownership. We'd like to maximize our ability to produce as many units as possible. We had said to the council and in our RFP, we thought 12 units was where we would land. Now with this opportunity, now that we've won the RFP, we can move lot lines around and maximize either the open space or on-site parking. That is not something that I think that we're far enough along to speak to what our plan would be at 46 grand, and we would certainly come back to you when we had that fleshed out. But I will say, we purchased it March 20th, so it's been about a month. We purchased from the city of Kingston. We have removed the recognized environmental condition of a 250-gallon, who knows what's in it, but probably cooking oil container. We have removed and closed out permits on an underground storage tank on the site. We have put up a fence. We have completed and closed out permits on the plumbing, gas and water disconnects. We have received a demo permit for the existing garage at 488 Hasbrook. We received a demo permit for the existing shed at 52 Grand Street. All this in preparation to come before you tonight, and we are in contract negotiations with the demolition contractor to sign a contract to demolish 46 Grand. If you have any other questions or if I can clarify anything, please let me know.
No, that was quite comprehensive.
Thank you. There's a surge of energy.
Any questions from the board?
No. I think
Very
this is
sweet.
I've been waiting for that thing, well, the bar, I was waiting for that, that was when it was gonna happen. They were trying to for us for damn sure.
And then one Kingston.
Well, I used to deliver regularly, so. So under seeker, this is a type 2 action, right? No further review of the board is required. Let's see. You have any questions?
Nope, I'm just doing this. Yeah, so.
So I will make a motion that we approve item number 7, and Sue is compiling the conditions and policies. Chuck will eventually be a second on it. Huh?
Okay, so what I have is word policy 6, and then it's approved with written descriptions of the new parcels submitted for staff review and approval, and 5 paper copies with 1 Mylar and the owner's signature for the chairman to sign.
Okay, so that is a motion, with Chuck with a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Take it easy.
President's, please.
We are going to need her.
She's not.
Asking lit on fire.
And it does slightly smell in the hallway, and the firemen.
You should be used to smoke smell.
The ones that are gonna have to be evacuated, we're all gonna take the stairs, it's gonna be up there.
Stretch.
But we don't want to yell fire
It's hot in here.
at you know.
Well, we're okay, so the next one is not here. Yeah, let's, can we do President's Place real quick? No, we have questions for her though, don't we?
Yes, we have a
Like,
question.
where's she gonna be?
Yeah. Where's she
can-
gonna live? Do we want to hold her till next month?
She didn't say she, yeah, I
Okay.
guess.
All right.
So,
Make a motion on the table and
yeah,
we'll make sure she
well,
gets it.
item number 8 is 24 President's Place, a special permit to operate a bed and breakfast, section block and lot 56.42-8-8, secret determination, Transecto T4N Ward 8. Jessica Carey is the applicant owner. Applicant owner is not here at this time, so we can't have any business with that. So at this time, I'll make a motion that we table item number 8. Vince Archer with a second on that. So we have 5. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried.
Okay.
I'll vote on that one, I guess.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, you will. You're a yes?
Andrew's here.
Andrew's yes.
Item number 9 is going to be tabled. I'm going to read it into the record anyway. Item number 9 is 336 East Chester Street. Special permit renewal for general commercial auto-oriented services and controlled substance sales. Section block and lot is 48.83-2-1.100, secret determination, Transecto T3N-O, Ward 7, MNZ Realty Holdings Incorporated is the applicant. The applicant has requested to be tabled, right? All right, so this time I make a motion that we table item number 9. Andrew with a second, all right? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried.
is it? Oh, yeah, okay, here we go.
Did you say anything about Green Street? Did you vote on that one, or did you, no, the last one?
Oh, yeah, he did.
Yeah, table.
Yes,
Okay.
table.
Oh, you know, you did, I need his signature
No,
on that.
he's there, but the next two are in.
All right. Okay, cool. You got one more, right? That one.
Okay. There should be another one. for
You should
you.
have another one for,
Yeah,
is that President's Place?
Long day.
Still there.
In the meantime, item 12 is 206 and 208 Flatbush Avenue, site plan / that is lot line deletion, change that to lot line deletion. Alright?
Yeah. Well, subdivision.
It's that part of this, okay, so subdivision. For a multifamily housing, major and minor waiver requests. Section block and lot is 48.74-3-24 and 48.74-3-19. Secret determination, Transect Zone SD-MF, Ward 6, Kingston Housing Authority is the owner. Anybody besides the owner wishing to speak on item number 12? It's our last item in the public hearing. Okay. Welcome, everybody.
Thank you. Good to see you guys.
Good to see you.
Let me just go around the room. Everybody, please introduce themselves.
Yeah, just introduce your team.
Sure, I'll just do a brief introduction and then we can introduce everybody. My
Okay.
name is John Hurst. I'm an attorney at Santa Ana Ryder in Newburgh, New York. So I'm the attorney for the Kingston Housing Authority. We also have Ms. Wilcox, she's the executive director for the Kingston Housing Authority. We have Brian Brooker, who's a site civil engineer for the Kingston Housing Authority project. John Canning is a traffic engineer, and here's the architect. So essentially just, this is site plan and subdivision approval for multifamily housing. It is a permitted use. It's in the SD-MF zoning district. The subdivision application is a result of the fact that we're merging two tax parcels. So in your code, in your definition for subdivision regulations, the merger is, I guess it's technically called a subdivision, even though we're merging two lots. So that's why we have a site plan and subdivision approval. We also have requested some waivers from some of the code requirements. We last appeared in January. At that appearance in January 2025, we presented the board with 3 different options regarding the height, because there was some questions regarding the height. At that time, the board had unanimously supported option number 1. So we took that information, we took that feedback, and the engineers and the architects were able to provide you guys the details that you need and that staff needs and the city needs to review the project. So we made a comprehensive submission in early April. It included drainage, lighting, landscaping, utilities, traffic, all of that stuff was provided to the city and entered into the portal and earlier this month. And so we're here for a public hearing. I guess there's no public comments, which I guess could be a good thing. So, you know, that's kind of one of the procedural steps. The next step we're hoping to take is to have this application referred to the county under GML 239N. And then obviously
She
there's
said,
got to be a secret.
Siri saying yes to that. So.
I asked you if you can approve the project.
Seriously, share your feelings.
Right. And the last thing would obviously, the other procedural step would be some secret determination if and when the board is ready.
Yeah.
So I don't know, do you guys want us, since there's nobody here from the public, do you want us to do a presentation?
I mean, are there any changes?
Well, there was new information submitted, so, yeah. Probably you can just update board members. Yeah.
The renderings are basically the same because we spent a lot of time talking about what building we chose and this was
So you remember, this was the one that was selected. So the whole design was done about this plan. And so the only major changes that you would probably see is, at one point, we were talking about a one-way through, but as a result of the comments that we received from the city engineer, I believe, he felt it would be better to have two-way traffic except one way here. So I put this band turnaround so that no one has no way to turn around. So if somebody does wander down here and there's no parking spaces, they can turn around and go back out the way they came in. So they could come in and go out here. They can turn around in this drop-off area along the front here. We try to coordinate this with the planting plan. This is sort of a pickup drop-off area for the residents. A lot of the residents won't drive, and they will have, rides that pick them up. So that's a good feature. You've seen the retaining wall we talked about before. There's a retaining wall here in the back that we talked about. There's an outdoor seating area, which we made a little bit larger than we originally had on the plan. I think we've made the generator pad slightly larger because they said the generator was bigger than I thought. We added the drainage, we added the details, we added all the engineering to the plan, but most of that's underground, so no one's gonna really see it. We did get a comment that the water main, which we're relocating to right here from underneath the wall, which is where it is now.
The water department, just not to interrupt you, but the water department, we've sent this around, we've started to circulate your drawings to all the other city agencies. And one of the things that the water department has already said to us is that they would like an easement wider than 10 feet. I know currently they have 10 feet, and it's shown in here that the proposed one will be 10. So that will be probably a comment that comes back from him, so.
I think we already got that comment. I think he asked for 20 feet now.
Yeah.
So the reason the new one is 10 is because the old one was 10.
Right, the old one was 10, and that's probably why, you made a new one 10, so
Right.
that was one of his initial.
Oh, I could talk to him about it. Yes.
Yeah, I'm hoping to get
10,
the formal
20 is
comments.
pretty wide, and I have a drainage
Right,
system in here. There's a lot going on in the road. As long as he doesn't mind if some of this encroaches on the 20 feet, I don't really have a problem with the 20 feet. But if he wants it to be clear, 20 feet, maybe 15 would be better. I'll talk to him about it. But I don't really have an issue with 20 feet because they probably want to drop, if they're going to dig up the line, they want to drop a place, have somebody to drop it. So it'll be all paved anyway, so dropping this stuff doesn't mean it will spread too far. And I don't think, if you want, we did include a landscaping plan. Did you want to shift to that one?
Is that in this set or was that a separate, can't remember if that.
Well, we did put it in the portal, we put it under the landscape architecture. I don't know if this is this is the lighting plan. The last one was probably a erosion control plan. These are road profiles. It's probably less than interesting to you.
so one of the things we'll get you is our staff notes too, that have detailed comments about the new set of drawings, and as other comments come through. Chris, I don't know, I know I sent you information, I don't know if you've had a chance to formally look at it, I haven't gotten any formal comment back.
Attorney reviews?
Yeah.
We
But anything
saw-
like
we
with
put
the
it on.
sprinklers, like you typically give the sprinkler comment, Chris, like you typically give the sprinkler comment, so
Yes.
I'm gonna want that from you formally, so we can get it into the record. Okay.
I believe this is the landscaping plan coming up here when it finally loads. Yeah, that looks like it. There. So these are the plantings along the road that was requested. These are the trees to be preserved. This is planting around here. These are the plantings behind the wall where the seating area is. These are the various seating areas, the pickup area, drop-off areas here. So that's about it. A lot of planting at the base of the wall. And then we also have the planting for the rest of Colonial Gardens on another sheet. So that's the major changes.
Does the board have any questions on this for the applicants?
I have one question. You made a statement earlier about the tenants that are going to be occupying the facilities there won't be driving. That's why you added that pickup spot space.
No, typically in this type of unit, there are a lot of people that get picked up.
Okay.
Rather than having.
There's 80 units. Yeah, it was 32.
Right.
Original units, so it went to 80.
Yeah.
So the assumption is that what's the percentage of people that would be driving? You have parking spaces available for them.
Well, I could tell, historically, for this type of unit, this type of 55 and older, doesn't mean that like everyone's 55 to 60. Usually, they're more like 70 to 80. So they could be any, they could be driving, they could be not driving.
But you have facilities, parking spaces to accommodate those that do drive, or?
Yes,
what's the
this
percentage of
is
the-
all the parking spaces that we have allocated towards this. Probably there'll be a lot left over and people from Colonial Gardens will.
Well, I noticed,
I think
we visited the site, I noticed a lot of
visit,
people
I noticed
from
that there
Colonial
were
Gardens
people
were
from
parking
Colonial Gardens
in that space
using
as well.
the parking.
So,
Well, Colonial Gardens is not age restricted for mine.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I have no issue with that. I think that's, yeah.
But to answer your question, historically, you need about 1 for 2 units for the amount of parking that's required. We have 78 units.
80.
80. I thought we had, 80 units, okay. And we used to have 82.
I just want to clarify about the parking too. I am working on new parking policies for our sites, so that's in the works right now, new parking policy, parking stickers. We will be able to identify those residents a lot more clearer too, for Colonial and for the new Penn Court. So if those Colonial individuals are in Penn Court's parking, where it's impeding on our residents at Penn Court, we will be addressing that.
Good.
Good, yep.
Right, so if you need to 40, there's more than 40 being created new.
Well, no, when we visited the site, I noticed that there were people from Colonial Gardens that were parking in the Penn Court parking area. So if you were designing it to accommodate some percentage of the 80, I would assume that you'd have done that as well, but now since she's going to address that with parking permits or whatever, stickers to identify who's who, I think that answers my question.
Okay, great.
Architecturally, their design is still the same, so we have 4-story unit, 4-story building here, and then on this one side is 3 stories, so the setback is on this side toward the neighboring house. The design hasn't changed, it's still 1 bedrooms, all the units have 80 units and 1 bedrooms. And they're all going to be either accessible from the beginning or adaptable for later. It's a great project. It's a great project. It's been fun working.
Any questions from board members? Okay, so I think what we just need to do really tonight is do your 2 formal referrals, one to the Ulster County Board and the other to the Recreation Commission, Parks and Rec. Want to get those done, and then we will also send our staff notes out to the applicants so that they can start working on those comments. And then as work with engineering require, we'll forward those out to you. Okay.
Any questions? Okay. All right, so at this time, I will make a motion that we table item number 12, refer.
Did you close the hearing? Formally?
Oh, I did not.
Yeah, I think.
We're good with closing the public hearing? Yeah. That'll be part of the.
Yeah.
Close the public hearing, refer the project to the county, Ulster County Planning Board, and also refer the application to Parks and Rec for the recreation fees. So that is a motion. Do I have a second? Second by Matt Gillis. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried. The finish line is getting closer, isn't it?
Yes.
Right?
Thank you.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
We did that. Yeah, exactly.
At some point. We live there. I was joking about this guy.
All right, item number 13 is a bond release for 21 Bluestone Court, release of remaining performance bond for terminated multifamily project. Section block and lot is 56.88-4-7, transect zone SD-MF, large site standards, Ward 1, SSLI Holdings LLC is the applicant owner. The applicant owner is not, they are not here.
They were.
They were.
We forgot to bring this up at the time, but this is basically the original project, had a performance bond. It went through 2 reductions. We were holding still $5,000 for the final SWIP. That's, everything's taken care of. So we're just closing it out formally. They will be required at some point in the future, they'll be required to bond for the improvements that they're proposing for the site now. So
It's 5,000?
5,000, yep.
All right. Any questions? All right. This time we'll make a motion that we release the remaining $5,000 performance bond for 21 Bluestone Court. Second by Matt Gillis. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried.
Next.
We can cut the cheap loose, can we?
Huh?
We cut the cheap loose right here. Yeah, all right.
Just making sure we don't burn down.
Yeah. All right, item 14 is referrals, form-based code zoning amendment, referral from the Common Council for recommendation.
Yeah. So I don't know if you're aware, but when the form-based code was adopted by the Common Council, they also established a separate group to look at things as it got implemented, to look at things that were not working correctly, did improvements, did modifications. So, you know, Kyla has been sending them information, building department sends them information. It gets discussed in this working group. And then we made a referral back to, a report back to the Common Council. It went to laws and rules, and like any zoning code, because it's zoning amendment, it needs to be referred out to the county planning board, the Landmarks Preservation Commission, and this body. So we can go through what the individual changes are that are being proposed. We talked about this, the first one a little bit earlier, payment in lieu of parkland. This is doing 2 things. Kyla's got that up on the screen. This is the memo. But can you go to the actual section where it talks about those, Kyla? This is basically where the Common Council will now set a fee. It's going to be a flat fee per unit. And the number of exempt is increased now, I think it goes up to the 7. So we're at 6, so the first 6 are exempt.
So this takes it right out of the hands of Parks and Rec Commission?
Theoretically, yeah.
Okay.
Yep, and basically makes your job a heck of a lot easier because it is what it is. There is an additional exemption, as I said earlier, on the table for affordable units. But the affordable units have got to be entered into the deed restrictive covenant under the 40519 section of the Columbus Code. So you can't just say, well, I'm gonna do 100% affordable. You have to go through that process. There is a deed covenant then put on the property, and that is a deed restriction that goes with the land forevermore. And if you do that, then those units will be exempt. And it's the affordable units. Okay. So it's, if a developer says, well, I'm only gonna do like 8 units affordable, well, then those would be the 8 units that are considered. The balance would not be eligible for the.
Only for the
Right.
units that are, okay.
Right, okay, so that's the first one. And this was referred to Parks and Rec, and the commission, and Parks and Rec Commission did agree to this. So off-street parking is the next one. As you're aware, when in the new code, if there are 4 or more units, it comes to this board and it requires an ADA parking space either on the property or in close proximity. And that is becoming a bit of an issue because we're ending up with parking having to be ADA parking spaces to be dedicated all over. And we're gonna have a proliferation of them, and that's not, I don't think, So what the committee, what the group is recommending is to remove that. ADA compliance will still need to be met, no matter what. You can't, that's a federal regulation. You cannot get away from that, and ProAg, which is another, so you're gonna be required to do that. But the committee is also recommending, now there was a grant that the city got to look at parking throughout the city of Kingston. And to look at, an equitable distribution of on-street handicap parking spaces in neighborhoods, in commercial districts, so that they are there and that they are available for those that need them, okay? So that's basically that second one. The next one is the first floor heights. You also heard this one being talked about. Kyla, can you go to the table? I think it's further down, maybe, yeah.
Didn't we have some of these issues happen like on Foxhall and Prince?
And Hanratty, you just said, right, yeah.
Same with Broadway today, with
Right.
615 Broadway.
So what we looked at was, we looked at the T5s and the T4. And what you see there is what is existing and what is being proposed. T5MS, they felt very strongly that it should stay at 16-foot minimum. But if you're in a historic district, it has to be 16-foot minimum, or mid-block can be contextual. Contextual is what you saw them doing tonight on Broadway, where they were proposing a lesser first floor height so that it is contextual with what is adjacent to them. And normally you would look at both sides, but in that case, they really only had the one side to look at. So in some cases, they may still be coming back for waiver requests in T5MS, but they thought that they felt very strongly it should stay at 16. And they actually went around, one of the members of the group is an architect, and actually went around to areas that are designated and went inside buildings and looked. And there are actually quite a few very high ceilings, you just don't realize it standing on the street, so. But in the flex, they did go down to 14. They stayed at 12 in the T5N. And then you see the biggest change is really in the T4Ns, and that's where the Hanratty Street came in. We went to from 16 to 9 and 12 to 9 in those T4NO and T4N, and then down to 14 in the T4MS. So that is what is being proposed there. The next change was signage standards. There's a few different things here. One is that we wanted a table. What is this? So we wanted a table in section 405-17, which is the signage section, because right now, if you want to know what types of signs you can put on your property, you have to go to one section, but then you have to go to the other section to see what the parameters of that are. So very much like you have in front of your building form, you've got a table that says, oh, you're a T5MS, you can have this building form, that building form, that building form, and it's very much the same thing. And in doing that, we really realized that there are sections of the code where you can have commercial businesses and some of the transects, but you weren't allowed to have any signage. So this change also now brings into the code allowing signage where businesses, so it aligns it much better with the uses as well.
Does this, there's the percentage of signs that can go on a window right now?
That's another one of the changes. Is that in
'Cause that's
this
rarely
particular
enforced.
one?
They have they have other fish to fry, but
The second one there is where you have window signs, you can, I don't know, the second one, or is that?
Is it 20% coverage now?
That's temporary signs.
I think there's another thing.
There's another section, yeah, so the temporary sign one is that, basically, if you have an actual building permit, people like to block out their windows if they're working inside, and that will allow them, but they have to have an active building permit in order to do that, and it's temporary signage. Neon is another change, to allow, neon as a material. Ironically, Kingston has a very well-known international firm business here that creates neon signage, and we don't allow neon signs in Kingston as a material. So we are introducing the material, the neon, use of neon, which has obviously progressed in technology, so it's not hot anymore. It's got, it's advanced. So we're introducing that back in. Window signage is also right now, and Carrie, we went through this with your property, your business downtown. Under the code, you can only have one window with 25% window signage. And as you know, many of the older storefronts have a centralized door and they've got windows on either side of the door. So if somebody wanted to, put a little sign here and a little sign on the second window, they were going for waivers. And that's kind of been a very common one that we've done a lot. So we asked for that to be changed. It's still 25%, but it's now two windows can have the signage. There was another window thing I thought.
Yeah, I think there's
Swinging signs. The overhanging signs in the code, the way the new code was written is they had to be fixed, so they could not swing at all. And in many cases, the swinging actually is not bad because it allows the sign to accommodate a wind flow, and when you have streets and signs, you've got tunnel effects, so to speak. So fixed signs actually add more stress sometimes to the building where it's connected. So this would allow a swinging sign rather than fixed if you have a projecting sign, and that's the minor change there. The next one was consistency with the New York State Building Code. And this is where it's basically aligning definitions for bed and breakfast and home occupation. And that's all that really is. It's just to align the definitions between our form-based code and the building code. And that's, I think, pretty simple. And lastly is an organizational one. One thing that we noticed right away was that accessory uses, the setbacks were not identified in the larger table up front where you see a lot of your setbacks, side yard, rear yard, front yard setbacks were identified, but accessory uses were not. So if you wanted to find an accessory use, you had to go to the transect and look into the wording there. So we just thought it's very simple, put all the accessory setbacks with all the other ones in the main table as a quick, easy reference. And one thing we did notice is that that's presuming that all accessory uses are in a rear or something. There's no front setback for a accessory use. So I don't know how the board feels about it, but theoretically, a person could put a shed in their front yard as an accessory use. So my thought there is you might want to make a recommendation that accessory uses be sited in side yard or rear yards, behind the front, to the side of the primary or principal building, or behind the principal building. And that would be the only thing I would suggest there.
I agree with that.
And that is it for that one.
Yeah.
But I thought ADUs are for dwelling only.
Huh?
I thought ADUs are for dwelling only.
ADU is a dwelling, but accessory uses can be garages, sheds, pools. It's all accessory uses.
Okay.
Nice to see some progress with some of the amendments. Okay, can we do can you guys, put parking on our next agenda?
Well, Sarah's working on
Oh, Sarah.
that.
You carry the torch.
Carrying the torch for parking.
I mean, we were all against it from the get-go, so.
Yeah.
It's just,
Yeah, it makes it too hard, so yes, I've already put in I've already put in,
We were highly
request to be there at the next zoning.
Make sure it
working group.
originates from this board. Any questions from the board on this, these recommendations?
With that one change.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So
What's the change we're doing here?
The change is to have the accessory items in the
I
rear
missed that.
side.
That's the last item.
Rear side yard. Front yard. Yeah, put your shed in the front yard.
That's
Only in the
it.
rear. Done right off my front porch, I'm doing it.
Okay, so I'll make a motion that we concur the recommendation of the common council on the changes to the form-based code as presented with that particular change.
Yep.
And Matt Gillis has a second on that. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Okay,
Sharon?
one more thing. There you go. Do you have a copy of the checklist form that can throw up? So with waivers, in order to help out with waiver reviews, with the housing initiatives in our department, we came up with what we feel is a first good tool, and it's just a checklist of things and considerations that you should be looking at when you're evaluating and creating your findings or your waivers that you're seeing and reviewing. Because with each waiver, they're individual to the property. And you do need to produce a finding for each and every waiver, defining why you're granting that waiver, why you feel justified in doing that. So we thought that creating a checklist would maybe help you come up with what you should be looking at, first of all, and understanding what the waiver is, and then helping you define your, and come up with your actual findings. So if Kyla, she's looking for it, I think.
Yeah, I'm searching, but my suggestion with this was, weren't we talking about doing a waiver, training?
We were gonna, yes, we're also gonna be looking at trying to set up a workshop with this board to talk about waivers
Maybe
and actually give you maybe a little bit better insight as to, how they should be looked at and, they're not, you should be really taking a hard look and there should be justification and a uniqueness, very much like variances, but, a little less stringent and there's more flexibility. They do allow for flexibility in the form-based code that you want. But they shouldn't be considered as of right.
It shouldn't be the norm. It should be more an exception.
Unique, yeah.
Well, like, for example, how we crafted what the final building is gonna look like for, with the discussion back and forth with Penn Court. Right, so the end product that we all felt was an appropriate building structure, the building shape for that project is gonna need a waiver from us in the end, right? That's the.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we all felt good about how we arrived at that, but now we have to formulate, why we feel that it is why it deserves a waiver,
Right.
After all that work we put into getting to that point, now we have to verbalize why we feel it's appropriate. So that's a good example.
Yeah.
There.
Yeah, and I mean, and what you did was you forced them to take a hard look at multiple options as well. So, and to present to you the case for you to say, okay, that's not going to be, a big abomination on the street as you might have originally thought. You've been presented with a good, visual simulation from multiple angles. And, you were able to really understand it. But that, that's something developers are gonna have to do, like Broadway. I think we basically told them, we didn't want to, set that, that look of having a metal staircase, which is like a fire escape, be the access on Broadway. It should look like all the other entrances to the upstairs residential, and they went back and they incorporated into the building in the middle. And I think they ended up with a much nicer structure, particularly that end unit with the glass is a lot nicer looking than a metal staircase. And that's gonna be an attractive unit for, I think, a tenant to take.
I agree.
So.
And applicants are gonna test us, right? They're gonna.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so this is.
So Kyla's got it up on, yes and no's, going through what, some basic premises of the form-based code. And, the code requires the applicant to really submit. It's not just, I want this. It requires the applicant to submit a detailed explanation of why they need this, why this is, not going to be, why this will conform to the form-based code, why this, fulfills, and that's something that we aren't getting in typical instances, and we're having to ask the applicant to submit that information to us. So this is kind of the basic list that we came up with. We just thought you'd want to see it, and we ask that you endorse this going, as a starting point, and we'll work on this going
I
forward.
think it's great.
It really helps.
Yeah, we can email it.
Thank you.
Yeah, this will actually go on to the website as well, under the waiver application. So the applicants will be aware of this as well.
That's great. Yeah, thank you for compiling that.
And speaking of the website, next week, we will officially be changing all of your emails to your City of Kingston emails. So if you have not tried them yet, I suggest that you do that immediately to make sure that you do not have any issues, that you can access your email, because otherwise you will not be getting emails from us.
But did he straighten out the problem I had?
Oh, I thought you have not straightened that out with
Well, I
Kyle yet?
downloaded Outlook, I think,
Okay,
but I haven't tried it.
okay,
I don't,
give it another.
typically I don't use Outlook. Use, just email and.
Okay, because, yes,
Mine's
next,
on my Outlook. It overtook all my
yeah,
other.
you were,
It overtook everything else. Like,
right
literally
away.
picked me out of all my other accounts on my Outlook. It's there.
That's the problem.
and you got yours working, right? You sent me an email that you got yours. You got yours.
I guess.
I remember you, or you.
Years.
Yeah, just if you use Outlook regularly, you don't.
I know, that's just
Yeah, I
your
don't
heads
use
up.
Outlook either, but I downloaded the app. from-
Yeah,
Uh,
I'll do it first thing tomorrow.
Okay. I won't call,
Like
But you're probably
Sage says,
up,
It's
so.
gonna take over your.
No, I'll do it.
It's 2.5 hours.
It's gonna take over all your mail. That's the problem. My wife did it and.
Yeah, wiped out the rest of mine, because I had my Hutton email on my.
Yeah.
I just wiped out my Hutton, just replaced it
The
with.
other thing I would say is that
this one.
there's a proposal now for a new tree ordinance, and I think I sent that to everybody, but there's gonna be a public meeting on it on Monday, the 28th, next Monday here at City Hall at 6:30, I believe.
Yeah.
So if you come to that, that could be considered a training element as well. So I wanted to throw that out there, but it's on, we're looking at updating, revising the tree ordinance. And it's, the reason I'm saying that for the planning board is that it's talking about regulating private property. So when site plans come before you, that would become involved with a site plan review, all right? So just so you're aware of that.
Can I ask a question from Rob earlier about parking with this, what is it, Boulevard? So it was mentioned that the planning board has the ability to say to a project, I would suggest or recommend or ask that you have X amount of parking per tenant, or per home residence.
Yeah. So in the code, under parking, there is a section that is called parking supply and demand reduction strategy. Okay? And in that section, it requires an applicant with a building footprint of 10,000 square feet or more gross floor area, or footprint of 10,000 square feet or greater, to do a supply and demand reduction strategy sheet. That's basically what 650 Broadway did, because their footprint was greater than 10,000 square feet. However, if that, you still, as a planning board, can require an applicant to do that. So you can require an applicant to look at their project, look at what the potential demand or need is going to be for off-street parking, and look at what is available, maybe in the immediate neighborhood, that you can require them to do that at any point with a majority vote of this board. So that is within your right to do that, to ask them to, you say you don't need any parking, but as a board, we feel maybe you should have, at least 10 spaces, let's say.
Can we hold them till you gotta have X amount of spaces?
Well, you can require them to do this, which would they would have to say, well, they'd have to demonstrate, like you saw what 615 did. They went to Energy Square and they really looked at,
project.
Right.
Right, but they're also, it was interesting because their data that they use is also brought in the data that they have from their other properties, which are in areas that have places to go get groceries you can walk to and all those things, whereas the other one is really not a part of that conversation. So it would be interesting to start having some of those other developments be required for the the parking, because it would probably show something very different.
Yeah.
Have we had anybody?
The only thing is you guys will need to make a record as to your basis.
Well, because we
It's not
get
required.
arbitrary and capricious
Yeah,
about it.
if you guys are requiring conditions, there must be
It's
something
gotta be
in the
consistent.
record where you guys are justifying why you're requiring conditions that are not mandatory in the code.
Did the other project on Pettit do a study like that? I think that they did.
No, they did not do any kind of a demand study at all. They just felt that they wanted, they felt that they wanted to provide some amount of parking, that's what they came up with. I don't know that they did any actual demand study to determine, I've got 24 two-bedroom units, I'm guessing, 0.5 spaces per unit, or based on, I've done my research, I've gone to this project or this project, and that's kind of where I see the need, where, like with the senior housing, essentially, that's what they've done internally,
Right.
knowing their clientele, knowing their residents.
Sure.
What their demand for senior, housing is gonna be, which is typically less than a regular housing
Right.
project.
That's bunch of little house on the prairie where you got a little store in town.
Horse and a buggy.
They'll have to get a shed.
No, but Matt, I think Matt's point is.
It's frustrating to see
Yeah, no, Matt's
developers
point is
that
well
are just
taken
trying to
too.
like
Get
get
to
something
the
going.
point.
And you have neighbors, right, and you have neighbors that are frustrated. It just seems like there's this underlining conflict that they're all just trying to resolve a problem that nobody's wanting to like actually lean into so that we can have a part in
The answer
making
is the
that
common
better.
council.
Right, then.
Change the statute.
Change the parking.
Sarah, you got-
Sarah's taking care of that.
But I will come to you for your advice and input.
So
Did you see
common
it?
council has more of an impact on the overall.
They're the ones who make the code.
Okay, that's not- Chuck with a motion to adjourn, Matt with a second.
Yeah, we made.
All in favor?
Yeah, well,
Opposed? Shut her down. Carried.
I told you.